Welcome to Positivity with Paul McKenna. How to master your emotions and run your own brain.
Welcome to a life-changing experience. As you listen and use this system, you'll learn how to take charge of your life, become powerfully confident, and use the strategies of some of the world's greatest geniuses to help you get more of what you really want. Over the years, I've helped all kinds of people, top business achievers to dramatically increase their personal wealth, and some of the world's leading athletes to win world championships. Now I want to share with you the secrets of easy success. You'll discover the techniques that have helped many others to break through their limitations and release their true potential. Together, we're going to program your mind to make you a happier, more confident, and powerful person. Success is all a matter of luck. Ask any failure. Actually, success and happiness are not accidents that happen to some people and not to others. They're created by certain ways of thinking and acting, ways that I'd like to share with you. Right now, more people are becoming successful than ever before in history. I know that you're committed to helping yourself achieve more of your true potential. That's demonstrated by you obtaining the positivity system. Your desire to make big career achievements, enhance your relationships, gain mastery over your emotions, dramatically increase your personal wealth, and excel in life will be rewarded by your commitment. Because if you don't commit to achieving your own happiness, no one else will. These days, there are lots of good self-help systems, but what they do is get you to do all the work. They have you doing endless exercises and tell you what to think and expect you to just go off and do it. That's like going to a restaurant and being told to cook the food. What makes the positivity system so much better is that it uses the latest psychological techniques to help you easily reprogram your mind so that you automatically begin to become more successful. Unlike other self-help systems, there aren't loads of things to sit and work through. You simply listen and follow the instructions, relax and program your mind with positive suggestions. I first became interested in self-improvement back in the early 1980s. Since then, I've made a study of highly effective and successful people. I wanted to develop an approach to understanding and creating human excellence in any form. I wanted to identify what it is that makes a highly successful individual exceptionally skilled, and then learn to acquire that skill in a fraction of the time that it took that person. I discovered that, genetic differences aside, it's because we all share the same neurology that anything anyone else can do, you can learn to do as well, simply by operating your nervous system and physiology in the same way. I've used that knowledge to build models of excellence, or positive software for the mind, and developed easy ways for people to program their own minds to make them more successful. My goal is to help you get greater control of yourself and your life. Another reason why the positivity system is so easy is because you won't be learning in the same ways that you have in the past. I'll be helping you to program your mind with lots of positive messages at an accelerated rate, so you begin to notice results much faster. You can listen to the positivity system in any order, although you'll find it most helpful to do the eyes closed processes several times. Just as a gardener plants seeds and patiently waits for them to grow, every time you listen to the positivity system, you're planting positive suggestions in your mind that'll grow into powerful new ways to operate the world's most advanced biocomputer, your brain. Even though you may achieve instant success, it's vitally important to do the exercises in order to get the kind of results that you want. No single technique is a magic pill for success, but when you practice them again and again, they become second nature to you. Before we get started, though, I'd like you to stop for a moment and consider, what would your life be like if it was exactly the way you wanted it to be? Imagine it as vividly as you can now. What would your career be like? Your relationships? Where are you living? How do other people treat you? As you think about that, how do you feel in yourself? As you use the positivity system, you're going to make your dreams come true. I've already helped many people to achieve their desires. Often they didn't believe it was going to be possible, but they followed my instructions and they ended up astounding themselves. Now it's your turn. The positivity system will change your life. As the saying goes, if you keep doing what you've always done, you'll just get more of what you've already got. Whatever you achieve in the next 10 years will be the result of what you do now. You have the power to make an amazing difference in your life, and it starts here. So let's get started. First of all, though, let me ask you another question. Would you like to be able to feel just about whatever you want, whenever you want? Well, over the next few minutes, I'm going to share with you the secrets of how to master your emotions and run your own brain. Because on this first part of the positivity system, you're going to learn how your state of mind and body, your emotions, affects everything in your life. Let me ask you this. Have you ever witnessed the same event as somebody else and found out later that they had a completely different account of it than you? You were both in the same place at the same time, but yet you perceived it so differently. The difference arises from the different states you were both in. Quite simply, love, anger, confidence, fear, apathy, happiness, fascination are all states. We're all constantly going in and out of different states of being all day long, and each of them is individual and unique to us. A state can be defined as the sum total of all the neurological processes occurring within somebody at any one time. A more simple way of describing a state is the mood that you're in. We're constantly changing states. Something happens to us and we react to it automatically. For example, you see someone you're attracted to, and that instantly changes your state. You have to give a presentation to a group of people, and that changes your state. We create our states largely by the pictures that we make in our imagination and the way that we talk to ourselves. I refer to these images and sounds as internal representations, and they're only that, representations of reality, but not reality itself. Your representations of reality are unique to you. They're your own personal way of perceiving the world. They're your own map of the world. But it's important to remember that a map is only a representation of reality and not reality itself. Or in other words, the map is not the territory. What I mean by this is that we don't experience things as they are, but rather as we are. For example, some people are pessimists, some people are optimists. They're both filtering reality differently. If you think about it, the way that you talk to yourself has a profound impact. For example, consider the tone of voice you use to criticize yourself. What does it sound like? What tone of voice is it? Is it angry? Sarcastic? What sort of things do you say to yourself when you make a mistake? Do you say something like, "Oh, another learning experience"? No, probably something more like, "You stupid idiot, you really screwed up this time," or "When are you ever going to learn?" So does talking to yourself like that make you feel better? No. But the voice does have a positive intent. It wants to stop you from making mistakes. It wants to help you get better. But it's just going about it in an unnecessarily harsh way. Stop for a moment and talk to yourself in your critical voice. Remember how it sounds. Say those nasty things to yourself. Now, notice where you make that voice. Is it at the front of your head, at the sides, the back, or is it outside? Wherever it is, I'd like you to move that sound to your shoulder. Imagine that voice talking to you, saying all those nasty things from there. Then, I'd like you to move it to the edge of your thumb. And hear it saying all those nasty things from your thumb. Next, let's slow it down and let's hear it say all those things in a sexy kind of voice. "You stupid, useless idiot. You really screwed up this time." Or maybe speed it up, make it sound like Mickey Mouse. "You stupid, useless idiot. You really screwed things up this time." It sounds much less threatening like that, doesn't it? Criticism is meant to be constructive. So I'd like you to ask your internal voice to find some new ways to offer you constructive criticism in future. It might say, for example, "Maybe there's another way to do this," or "Okay, that wasn't perfect, but how can I do it better next time?" Or maybe it will just talk to you in a kinder tone of voice, because if it isn't nicer to you, in future you can Mickey Mouse it. Furthermore, everybody has the ability to visualize. If you're not sure how you visualize, remember your front door. What color is it? What side's the handle on? In order to think about that, you have to go into your imagination and make a picture of it. It's not only what, but also how we represent things in our minds that determines our state from moment to moment. Let's do an experiment. Stop for a moment and think of a time when you felt really, really good. see what you saw in vivid detail, and hear what you heard. Now, make the colors richer and brighter, the sounds louder. Make the pictures bigger, and the sounds even louder again, and notice what that does to your feelings. The power of the pictures we make in our mind and the way we make them has a powerful effect upon us. Right now, if you just tell your mouth to salivate, it won't make any difference. But think of your favorite food and remember what it tastes like, and it will. This demonstrates the link between the mind and body. Our muscular tension or relaxation, our breathing and body posture all influence our states as well. If your body's tense, it's producing different chemicals to when it's relaxed. So of course it's going to feel different, and that will create different thoughts. In a nutshell, the way that you feel from moment to moment is a result of the pictures and sounds that you're making in your mind and the way that you make them, and the posture of your body as well. It's because the mind and body are constantly influencing each other. If you change your thoughts, it affects your body, and vice versa. For example, try smiling when you feel angry. It's hard because your mind is saying one thing and your body another. However, when you manage it, you may well be surprised at how much better this simple change will make you feel. Many people are unaware of how they're making their feelings from moment to moment. For example, have you ever had an argument with someone and even hours later you keep seeing their face in front of you and find yourself rehearing all the nasty things that they said to you which make you feel bad? That's your brain running you rather than you running your brain. I used to do that until I discovered that if I changed the picture I was looking at and the sounds I was hearing, it changed the feeling. As you begin to notice the pictures and the sounds that you make in your imagination and change them to ones that empower you, you'll stand out from the rest. That's because most people these days spend more time learning to work their cell phone than they do their own brain. Go ahead and try it for yourself. Think of somebody who you don't like or who annoys you, and notice an image of them comes to mind. Now, is it a color image or black and white? Notice where you're making it. Is the picture on the left, the right, or in front of you? Okay, now let's play with the way that you're representing them. Try out these changes and notice what happens. First of all, drain all the color out of the image so it looks like an old black and white photograph of that person. Then, shrink the image down. Move the location of the image so it's much further away, and then give that person a clown's nose, pink hair, or Mickey Mouse ears. And then imagine the sound of their voice, like, say, Mickey Mouse. So they say all the things that used to wind you up in a high-pitched tone of voice. By making these changes in your internal representations, you recode the way that you feel about them so that they no longer trigger the stressful response. The next time you meet this person, you'll feel differently, which means that they'll respond differently to you, changing the dynamic of your relationship. At school, we're told what to think, but not how to think. What we've just been learning is how to think in ways that are more empowering. Many people presume that because there's a voice inside their head, they have to listen to it, even if what it says is not supporting them. You are in charge of your state, and as you continue using the positivity system, you'll discover even more ways to successfully change it. For example, think of a mildly uncomfortable memory for a moment. As you think of it, notice that an image comes to mind. Next, I'd like you to pull back from that image, step out of the picture, and move the image off into the distance so that you can see yourself, but way off in the distance. This process of disassociating reduces the intensity of the feelings that the image was creating. Now, let's do it the other way round. Find a time you felt great, you felt absolutely fantastic, and an image comes to mind. Step into yourself in that image. See through your eyes, hear through your ears, and feel that fantastic feeling. Now, make the image bigger and brighter and bolder. Make the sounds louder and the feeling stronger. It's so easy. To reduce the intensity of a feeling, step out and move back. To increase intensity, step in and make bigger. That's because, generally speaking, images that are bigger, brighter, and closer have greater emotional intensity than those that are dull and further away. From working with people who were depressed, I discovered that generally they were stepping into unhappy times and out of the happy ones. They literally got psychologically wired up the wrong way round. By repeatedly changing their representations, they got a lot happier. So now you know how to influence your state. You're going to be a lot more in control of the way you feel. for example, I remember years ago when I first started going to nightclubs, one of the most terrifying things was to make that long walk across the dance floor with people watching and publicly ask a girl to dance. The fear of public rejection was immense. So how did I create that feeling of fear? First of all, I'd stand up and begin walking across the dance floor, saying to myself in a weedy little voice, "She's going to tell you to get lost. Everyone's looking at you." I'd run a movie in my mind of the girl laughing in my face as I nervously asked her, and everyone else looking at me with contempt. So by the time I actually did walk up to the girl, I was fully expecting her to reject me. I'd communicate this unconsciously with my body language and fearful tone of voice and say, "I don't suppose you want to dance, do you?" She'd think, "Who is this idiot?" And the whole thing had become a self-fulfilling prophecy. I'd get rejected. So when I learned to run my own brain and control my state, I changed that. I'd stand up and I'd imagine hearing a loud drum roll in my mind. Then a gospel choir would sing,
"He's gonna ask that girl to dance, oh yeah."
An uplifting, confident fanfare would play as I walked across the dance floor. And I'd say to myself in a voice I really believed, "You are invincible. That lucky girl might get to dance with you." And I'd imagine a big, bright, solid image of her saying, "Yes, I'd love to dance with you." This, of course, reflected in my confident body language and tone of voice. Now, even if by some fluke she rejected me, I didn't care because I felt so good. I'd look upon it as her loss. I know this sounds a bit ridiculous, but I'm using an extreme example to make a point. You don't have to hear drum rolls and fanfares in your mind to feel good. You might just want to talk to yourself in a nicer way. The point is, you have a choice. You are in control. It's your brain, and the way you run it through the pictures and sounds you make is up to you. Have you ever had to give a presentation and made big, bright pictures of yourself, forgetting what you're talking about, looking nervous, imagining your audience saying to themselves, "What an idiot"? Stop for a moment. Does this really make you look forward to giving the presentation? No. What's happening here is that your mind wants to help stop you from looking foolish, so it considers some of the things that could go wrong. Unfortunately, if it only presents you with the worst-case scenarios, you end up in fear. There's a saying, disappointment requires adequate planning. So to avoid this happening in future, you need to think of those things that could go wrong in a disassociated way, in other words, far off in the distance. And then, more importantly, consider the things that could go right and associate or step into those good feelings and think about them continually. You've got many resourceful states: confidence, optimism, joy, determination. In a moment, I'll show you how to program your mind to experience more of those more often. Next, though, I want to share with you one of the most important techniques in the entire positivity system. I first used it in 1990. Since then, I've noticed a remarkable upturn in my confidence, an incredible ability to solve problems, and I believe this technique could make the single biggest difference to your life. However, it only works if you use it regularly. And some people don't bother to do it regularly, probably because they don't believe that one technique could make such an amazing difference. But I promise you it can. Scientific research at the University of California has proved that the more we repeat a behavior, the stronger that pattern becomes. The more we neglect it, the weaker it gets. It's just like the legendary experiment involving Pavlov's dogs. And it reinforces a theme running throughout the positivity system, which is you always get more of what you focus on in life. In our culture, many people turn to things like cigarettes, alcohol, drugs, chocolate, shopping, or gambling to change their state. Through repetition, they've literally hardwired themselves to these stimulants to change the way they feel. It's the same with negative thought patterns. All of us, from time to time, worry or think that we can't do it, or believe that we're not worthy or not good enough, or just lack confidence at some stage. However, the people that excessively think these kinds of thoughts over the years literally hardwire themselves to be negative. The technique I'm about to suggest is the remedy, and everyone can benefit from it. The technique is called the negative thought fast, and it works the way it sounds. You're going to deny yourself negative thoughts and give yourself positive ones instead, but in a particular way. Here's how it works. It's very simple. For the next 2 weeks, whenever you feel bad about anything, stop, and follow these 5 easy steps. 1. Stop and ask yourself, what are you feeling bad about? And look what image comes to mind. Remember, every feeling is linked to an internal picture or sound in your mind. 2. Find out the intention of the image. Negative emotions are only signals to let you know to pay attention to something. For example, if I have a worrying feeling and I stop and notice an image is coming up of a meeting, my mind is trying to alert me that things might not go the way I want them to in that meeting. 3. So it's a simple solution. Think of all the things that I can do to stop those problems occurring. 4. When I've done that, I drain all of the color out of the image. I shrink it and move it off into the distance. 5. Then I make a big, bright picture of the meeting going perfectly the way I want it to, and I step into it. Test it out now. Think of something that makes you feel bad. And an image comes to mind. Notice whether the image is color or black and white, and where it's located. Is it in front of you or to the left or the right? Is it big or small? Is it a movie or is it a still image? Is it solid or is it transparent? Are there any sounds with this image? Okay. Now, all of this information is what gives the bad feeling its power, and you were unconscious of that going on until just recently. So now we're aware of it. We're going to ask what its intention is. What does the image want to let you know? If you're feeling bad, it's always for a reason, no matter how unusual. So stop and ask yourself, what's the intention behind this feeling? And think of some ways you can respond to that. Next, drain all the color out of the image. Shrink it, move it off into the distance. If it happens to reappear, ask yourself, is there something I've missed? If there is, great. If not, just drain the color out again and then shrink it and send it off into the distance. You only get the amazing benefits of this technique if you practice it absolutely every time you feel bad about anything for the next 2 weeks. You'll totally recondition yourself. You'll become more positive, more energized and optimistic. Stand by to program your mind for success.
Positivity. Positive software for your mind. How to have supreme self-confidence and charisma.
How would you like to feel totally confident, become powerfully charismatic, and take that into every area of your life? Follow all my instructions fully and completely, and I promise you'll experience a tremendous improvement in your confidence and in your life. I've already helped hundreds of thousands of people to have more confidence, from Hollywood movie stars to Olympic champions, even royalty. Now I'm going to help you. In a few moments, I'm going to take you through a number of techniques which, as you regularly practice, will create in you automatic patterns of confident behavior. So in future, you won't have to remember to be confident, it'll just happen naturally. Many people who've used this system often tell me that they suddenly start to notice that they handle situations better. When a challenge occurs, they know exactly what to do, almost without thinking. You know how it is. It's only afterwards that you realize how well you've done. Whether you get more confident straight away or whether it happens a bit more each day doesn't matter. As you use these techniques regularly, you'll become more confident at a rate that's comfortable to you. For example, over the years, I've seen people who've been shaking with nerves easily overcome their fears with my system. I've seen people who are paralyzed by stage fright take to an audience like they've been doing it all their lives. The reason it's so easy is because the key programs of human behavior are habits and imagination. They're far more powerful than logic or willpower. For example, if you try telling your heart to speed up, it won't do it. But if you imagine walking along a dark alley late at night, hearing footsteps behind you, you'll feel it respond. Your body responds far more to the vivid use of imagination than it does to a simple command. As you use the positivity system, you'll rehearse success over and over again in your mind, just as athletes visualize winning again and again to guarantee success. All our creativity and our achievements start in the imagination. Learning to use your imagination is learning to make what you imagine come true. Almost everything you see around you was once just an idea in someone's imagination. As you learn the secrets of creative imagination, you'll discover how to make your dreams come true. So let's get started. If it's safe and appropriate to do so, I'd like you to close your eyes. Otherwise, just imagine what I'm about to ask you to do with your eyes open. I'd like you to stop for a moment and really think right now about how much better your life would be if you were totally confident, if you had all the power, strength and self-belief, all the charisma that you could ever need. Ask yourself, what would you do if you knew you couldn't fail? Just sit back now and imagine yourself achieving excellence. Notice how you look, the expression on your face, the light in your eyes. Notice the life, the grace, and the elegance in your movements. Become fully acquainted with every aspect of your presence during a moment of successful achievement. Notice how you're sitting or standing, your expression, your movement that lets you know that this is a moment of great success. The concentration or the happiness, the grace, the ease or commitment of your movements, the sense of mastery. Now, what I'd like you to do next is float into that confident you. See through the eyes and hear through the ears and feel the feelings of your confident self. That's it. Really see what you'd see, hear what you'd hear, and feel how you feel, totally confident. Now, make the colors brighter, the sounds louder, and the feelings stronger. Notice where that feeling of confidence is strongest in your body, and give it a color, and move that color up to the top of your head, and down to the tip of your toes, and then double the brightness. Double it again and again. Take a moment or two now to really vividly imagine that event again in detail. See what you'd see, hear what you'd hear, and feel how good you feel. Now, I want you to consider, where will you use your confidence? What changes will it make for you as you're more confident? Now, open your eyes and come on back. As you remember, the human mind works by association. When we've experienced two things together for a while, one will automatically remind us of the other. This association or linking is very powerful and very useful. In a moment, we're going to do that imagination exercise again. This time, when you get that good, strong, confident feeling, I'd like you to make a specific action. I'd like you to squeeze your thumb and middle finger together, so that after you've done that several times, the confident feeling will become associated with the squeeze of your thumb and finger. Then you can trigger that confident feeling whenever you need to, just by squeezing your thumb and finger together. Once again, if it's safe and appropriate to do so, I'd like you to close your eyes. Otherwise, just imagine what I'm about to ask you to do with your eyes open. Okay, remind yourself of that picture of you being successful and confident. Step into your confident self. See what you'd see. Hear what you'd hear. And feel how good you feel, totally confident. Now, make the colors richer and brighter, the sounds louder and crisper, and the feelings stronger. Now, notice where that feeling of confidence is strongest in your body. Give it a color, and move that color up to the top of your head, down to the tip of your toes. Double it, and double the brightness again. Vividly imagine it. Really feel it within you and around you. That's right. And when you're feeling that confidence strong, press your thumb and middle finger together. That's it. And go through it again. See what you'd see. Hear what you'd hear. And feel how good you feel. Make the colors rich and bright. Make the sounds loud. And make the feeling strong as you're squeezing your thumb and middle finger together, creating a strong associational link between that good feeling and the squeeze of your thumb and finger. Now relax your fingers. And think of a time in the future when you're going to need that confident feeling. Think of a time now and squeeze your thumb and finger together again and remember that confident feeling. And imagine things going perfectly the way you want them to. See what you'll see. Hear what you'll hear. And feel how good it feels to be totally confident. Maybe throw in a challenge or two. Notice how well you handle things. That's right. And when you've completed that, open your eyes and come on back. Do this simple but powerful exercise as often as you can, and you'll find it gets easier and more powerful each time. Practice this every day for at least 3 weeks, and whenever you feel challenged, simply squeeze your thumb and finger together, concentrate for a few moments, and access your inner state of confidence. Do it at least 10 times in a row. Olympic athletes the world over have used exactly this technique to prepare to win their competitions. Now, you can use it too. The mind is very sensitive, and if you're able to feel more confident as you run those scenarios in your imagination, you'll feel much more confident when they occur in the real world. I remember a few years ago when I teamed up with a huge promoter who wanted to take on my live shows. He decided to hire the biggest theatre in London. I'd never played anything like it before. When I stood on the stage a few days before the show and looked out at the massive empty auditorium, I suddenly started to feel fear in my stomach. So I decided to do some work on myself to crank up my confidence. I did the same exercise that we just did. I got a feeling of confidence associated to the squeeze of my thumb and middle finger, and then imagined the event going beautifully. However, I only imagined feeling it during the show itself. The night of the performance, I started feeling a little on edge, and so I assumed the technique hadn't worked. However, the moment I walked out on the stage, it was as though a sheet of calm came over me, and I glided through a perfect performance. Even though there were a few challenges, I felt so calm and in control, I handled all of them automatically. As soon as the show was over, I realized what had happened. I'd imagined being confident during the show, and it's because the human mind is so precise that it only switched on confidence at that precise moment. You see, we're all born with confidence. Babies are confident. They cry and they expect to be fed. They explore and they have no fear. We all have the ability to regain the confidence we're born with. And one of the main things we have to do, which is ridiculously simple, is just to make room for confidence. People who've lost confidence feel fear, and so often they hurry to get past things or hang back and avoid them. They speak too little or too fast. To let ourselves feel confident, we need 2 simple qualities: patience and flexible thinking. A few years ago, I was giving a presentation at a conference. I was on a panel with other speakers, and while they spoke, I was really enjoying relaxing and being a member of the audience. So it came as a bit of a shock to me when I was called to speak. I went to the rostrum and I looked out and I saw a huge room full of people looking at me. All of a sudden, I felt my stomach tighten and my hands went clammy and started to tremble. I was very surprised because I'm used to appearing in public, so I wasn't expecting to feel anything like that. What I did was nothing. I just stood there and noticed my feelings. First of all, I noticed my breathing. I got used to standing where I was. I thought for a moment about what I was going to say and how much I believed in it. I didn't have to call it stage fright or lack of confidence. I was excited, and that added a spark to my presentation. Then, when I felt ready to speak, I began. Now, this was a fairly simple little incident, but it shows 3 things. Firstly, you never know when you're going to be surprised, because I had no idea I was going to feel anything like that when I stood up. Secondly, it reminded me of the value of patience. I simply took my time to notice what I felt and got used to it. I didn't rush away from my feelings by diving straight into my presentation in a terrible rush, and when I acknowledged how I felt, it wasn't overwhelming. It helped to notice my breathing and to let that be calm as well. Thirdly, I reminded myself that the feeling I felt wasn't good or bad. It was just what I felt. I could choose to call it fear or stage fright, or eagerness or excitement, and I chose to call it excitement. I was reminded of this when I was sent a tape of my presentation, and I heard the pause before I started to speak. This was the pause that I took to make room for my confidence. There are lots of ways you can make room for confidence in your life. In conversations, we can practice confident listening. Confident listening is allowing yourself to concentrate fully on the other person's speech. It means that rather than preparing what I'm going to say, I really listen to you, and so often when I listen well, what I need to say, and when it's okay to say nothing, becomes much clearer. When I hear the rhythm of the conversation, I discover that there are plenty of times when silence is appropriate. By listening with patience, I make room for confidence in my conversations. The same is true with actions and feelings. Patience makes room for confidence. Turn your attention outward to the world while acknowledging what you feel. Stay curious. Often, you don't have to do half as much as you were worried about when you lacked confidence. And when it's time to act, what you have to do is clear and simple. We all use habits a great deal in our life. Some habits help our confidence, others don't. So to increase our confidence, we have to amplify the habits that assist us and eliminate those that don't. Much of our thinking is habitual. It happens all by itself and just as a string of associations. Mostly, we tend to be absorbed in a task or interest, or afloat on a river of automatic thinking. However, we can affect it. With a little effort, we can redirect our attention. It turns out that associational thinking is very powerful, so this effort has to be made over and over again. At first, it's quite surprising to discover how easily we can be distracted, but if we repeat the effort over and over again, we gradually find that we affect our patterns of association and also increase our powers of concentration. It's also useful to phrase things positively, to use optimistic language whenever possible. I don't mean that we should ignore difficulties or problems, but that we should always look towards the solution. If we use positive words to ourselves and others, we're more likely to receive positive words and messages from them. So avoid putting people down or putting yourself down. Watch out for negative phrases like, I can't, or I shouldn't, or I'll never. Whenever you hear yourself use a phrase like that, stop and rephrase it in positive terms. For example, instead of, I can't do such and such, use, I can learn how to do such and such, or I haven't learned how to do such and such yet. An important theme that runs throughout the positivity system is that there's no fixed meaning in life except the meaning that we bring to it. By looking at things that you've got going for you. Positive thinking becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Every time we pay attention to something, we energize its presence within us. If we pay attention to negative thoughts, we just make them stronger, so they crop up more and more often. But when we pay attention to positive thoughts, we strengthen them, so that they return to our consciousness more and more often. Remember, the golden rule is, you always get more of what you focus on in life. We all know people who have a kind of magic quality about them. When they walk into a room, it lights up, and we feel drawn to them. They don't have to be the life and soul of the party. Sometimes they don't even seem to do or say much at all, but something about them makes them mysteriously attractive. They have that quality called charisma. Charismatic people feel comfortable in themselves. They aren't desperately looking for the approval of others. That's why we feel attracted to them. So let's do a couple of techniques now to really crank up your self-appreciation and make you more charismatic. If it's appropriate to, close your eyes. If not, do this with your eyes open. And think of someone who loves or deeply appreciates you. Remember how they look, and imagine they're standing in front of you. Now, gently step out of your body and into the body of the person who loves you. See through their eyes, hear through their ears, and feel the love and good feelings that they have as you look at yourself. Really notice in detail what it is that they love and appreciate about you. Fully understand those amazing qualities that perhaps you hadn't appreciated about yourself until now. Take a few moments to feel good as you look at yourself now. Then open your eyes and come on back out. This next technique is excellent for making you feel much more attractive as a person and was devised by my colleague Michael Breen. So go and get a mirror and don't continue until you have. One of the reasons this technique works so well is because everyone receives compliments and praise from time to time. Sometimes they may seem trivial. Hey, you're looking good. Or, you look sharp today. And at other times they're quite significant, like, you're so sexy. Or, do you know how much people respect you? Sincere positive perceptions from others, perceptions that you might not have been able to see or fully appreciate from the point of view you had at the time, can be valuable in learning to appreciate your own qualities more fully and enhance your self-esteem now. So, if it's appropriate, close your eyes. If not, Do this with your eyes open. Firstly, in front of your mirror with your eyes closed, recall a time when you were paid a compliment by somebody you respect or trust. You don't necessarily have to have believed the compliment for yourself at the time, but you do need to trust the sincerity of the person who said it. Run through the experience again. See what you saw, hear what you heard. As you recall that compliment and the sincerity of the person who said it, pay particular attention to the feelings of trust and regard for the other person. When you feel that feeling strongly in your body, notice where it is you feel it. Give it a color. Move it up to the top of your head, down to the tip of your toes, and double the brightness. When you feel that feeling strongly, open your eyes, look in the mirror, and see what they saw. Allow yourself to see something good that someone else has seen in you, and notice how good it feels. Another part of making room for confidence in our life is accepting that there's risk. This may sound odd at first. After all, we often wish that we had so much confidence that we could avoid risk. But confidence isn't knowledge. If we know we can do something, we don't need confidence. We can just do it. We only have confidence if we're not 100% sure of success, yet we still have a go. That's the essence of confidence. When there's no risk, there's only certainty. Confidence only comes when there's risk, so we must embrace the risk, recognize it, and realize that it has a place in our lives. In fact, it's because of this risk that you can value your achievement, because you achieve them in the face of risk. Each step is a risk, however small, and as you get used to having confidence, you'll realize that you get used to having risks. Risks don't go away. We just learn that we can face them and deal with them, and as we do so, we become more powerful. We learn that we can achieve our goals and become more confident. Let me show you one more thing that increases your confidence, and it's great fun as well. It's very empowering and enjoyable to look forward to the success in our future, and the more we get used to it, the more it happens. If it's appropriate, I'd like you to close your eyes now. If not, just imagine this with your eyes open. I'd like you to fantasize how good things would be in your ideal world. Imagine your dreams have come true. You're doing exactly what you want to do. All around you, you can see exactly what you'd like to see. Everything you hear is perfect, and you enjoy what you feel as you do this. Notice where in your body it feels best of all. Locate the feeling and give it a color. Imagine that color glowing there within you. Now, begin to move that color all over your body, to the top of your head and down to the tip of your toes. Let it permeate your body. Notice how wonderful you can feel just by using your mind like this. Make sure it's around your legs, your feet, your stomach, your chest, your shoulders, your arms, your hands and your fingers, your neck and your face. Make it truly brilliant. Turn up the brightness, feeling joy and energy surge within you. And keep that feeling within you. Wonderful, brilliant, bright, fantastic. When you feel good and happy, your non-verbal communications put you in tune with good and happy people and help other people feel good too. So you create a warm, friendly atmosphere. With this simple exercise, you can actually affect the world around you. Do this every day. And soon you'll notice how it begins to bring out the optimism and enthusiasm in people that you mix with. Remember, happiness and excitement are contagious. Okay, open your eyes and come on out. Finally, remember, walk tall. When you finish listening to this, get up and hold your head high in a comfortable and relaxed position on your shoulders. Imagine that a golden thread runs vertically up your spine and straight up to the sky, and that thread supports you. Let yourself relax safely, held by that thread. This relaxed upright stance is the natural position of confidence, and it will soon be as natural to you as breathing, so enjoy it. Remember to use these techniques every day, and don't be too surprised at how much more confident and charismatic you become. Use them as often as you can. As your confidence increases every day, you'll find yourself doing things that you used to dream of.
Positivity. Positive software for your mind. Discover your true potential and become the person you really want to be.
We are alive at an exciting time in history. Our world is transforming every day. The scientific, technological transformations and breakthroughs that are taking place all around us are increasing at an exponential rate. We, as a human race, are connecting over great distances, exploring and reshaping the world around us. Calculations that used to take years, journeys that used to take months, are now made in hours. Evolution is unfolding, and wherever it is we're going there fast. Right now, we live in a digital information age. Faxes, telephones, computers, satellites are all part of modern-day 21st century life. Something happens on one side of the world, and we watch it on our TV screens moments later. Global communication systems can connect us mind to mind, like nerve cells in a huge global brain. We stand on the edge of an enormous leap in our evolution, and I believe that the next great stage in human development will be a move out of the information age and into a new time where people will begin to develop their inner resources, the age of psychotechnology, a time when we'll begin to unleash the amazing powers and inner abilities that we're all born with. However, right now, most people spend more time learning to work their DVD than they do their own brain. I see understanding and practicing techniques like those on the positivity system as having an owner's manual for your brain. These techniques are excellent tools for self-development, self-programming, and self-discovery. In my opinion, traditional positive thinking is not very effective. Standing in front of the mirror saying, day by day, in every way I get better and better, doesn't really work if you don't create a feeling of being better. That's because the key programs of human behavior are habits and imagination, far more powerful than logic and willpower. For example, if you try telling your heartbeat to speed up, it won't do it. But if you imagine walking down a dark alley late at night, hearing footsteps behind you, it will. Your body responds far more to the vivid use of imagination than to a simple command. That's why the way we see ourselves in our imagination is crucial. It affects all of our behavior. To create real change requires something very powerful, a new self-image. So what is a self-image? It's the way you see yourself in your mind as being a certain kind of person. Many people don't realize that they have an image of themselves until they look. Your self-image is your inner mirror or map, which you unconsciously look at to constantly see how to behave or perform. The reason your self-image is so powerful is because we never deviate from this internal map of who we think we are. It works like a self-fulfilling prophecy. For example, we've all met people who are not classically good-looking, but yet they think of themselves as attractive, and for some reason they have an aura about themselves. Equally, there are plenty of people who think of themselves as unattractive, and unconsciously they sabotage any attempts to try and make themselves appear more attractive. If you truly believe that you're unattractive, then you won't be able to represent yourself at your best, and people will inevitably find you unattractive. For example, studies have shown that people who earn more than they believe they're worth feel uncomfortable with the extra money, so they spend it or lend it. They find some way to get rid of it. Incidentally, you can have a strong positive self-image in one area of your life, for example, business and career, and a weak self-image in another, say, relationships. But human beings never deviate from it. Generally, we don't necessarily get what we want in life, but what we expect. We all have to either live up or down to our expectations. One study showed that 90% of prisoners had been continually told by their parents, "One day you'll end up in jail." Quite simply, you can never be better on the outside than you believe yourself to be on the inside. How you think of yourself also affects how other people feel about you, because they're constantly responding to your body language, tonality of voice, and the emotional signals that you're constantly transmitting. All day long, people are interpreting the congruency of your overall communication and the emotions that lay behind what you're saying. Over 90% of what we communicate is unconscious. For example, you might be saying one message with your words and another with your body language. By changing or representing your self-image, you can not only like yourself more, but be more liked by others as well. Your possibilities at any moment in life are computed from your self-image, which is a psychological blueprint of yourself. Not how you like to think of yourself, but who you truly think you are. So, the better you think of yourself, the richer and more rewarding your life will be. This is not a new concept, but is contained in every spiritual system of teaching on the planet. The good news is it's easy to change your self-image. Let me explain how. In the early 1970s, Maxwell Maltz, a plastic surgeon, wrote a best-selling book, Psycho-Cybernetics. He noticed that altering the physical appearance of his patients through surgery often created a remarkable change in personality. For example, a simple piece of plastic surgery made a client's self-esteem rise. However, it didn't work with every single one, and some patients didn't experience any psychological benefits, no matter how spectacular the physical changes. Dr. Maltz concluded that the cosmetic correction to the external appearance of a patient doesn't work when their internal image is poor, or, as he put it, they are scarred on the inside. So he taught those clients a simple technique to change their self-image. And it did the trick. By getting these people who had poor self-images to change the way they thought about themselves, they suddenly became happier, more fulfilled, their self-esteem rocketed. It was easy. Essentially, all they were doing was imagining themselves as they ideally wanted to, and then they'd step into that idealized self over and over again until the new image ingrained itself in their minds. A little later on, we'll do this exercise. To show the effect of the self-image and how to change it, Dr. Maltz used cybernetics, a relatively new science that started in the 40s. Cybernetics is the science of control and communication in animals and machines. Living organisms and certain sophisticated machines have sensors that detect deviation from a set goal. They're able to feed back information which is interpreted in order to make corrections to the output or behavior of the organism or machine to keep it on target to a set goal. So in one sense, the mind is like a heat-seeking missile. Its goals or targets decided by unconscious programming, most of it done in the first few years of life. So your personality, your behavior, and life circumstances are a direct result of your self-image. Your self-image sets the boundaries of what you believe is possible for you to achieve in life. Some people's self-image is so restrictive that they never accomplish what they truly desire. Others have a great self-image and they achieve greatness. As Dr. Maltz said, we act, behave, and feel according to what we consider this self-image to be, and we do not deviate from this pattern. So how is your self-image formed? The earliest messages you received from the world were from your family. Some of them were positive, you beautiful baby, and some of them were negative, you stupid child, or shame on you, or why are you always making a mess? The average American parent criticizes their children 8 times more often than they praise them. You soaked up all the positive suggestions along with the negative. Some psychologists believe the most profound emotional discomfort a child suffers is the withdrawal of love and approval from its parents. This is why some children grow up to become desperate attention and approval seekers. Almost everyone is affected by this to some degree. Some of what we do in our daily lives is designed to get us love or approval, to compensate for any lack of love we had in our childhood. As you make your self-image one that you love and respect even more, you won't need to manipulate others into giving you love or respect, because you'll feel so good in yourself that others will be naturally drawn to you. As a child, so many people are bigger than you and seem to know more than you do. Then you start at school and a whole new world of problems comes along. Just as you're getting the hang of that, puberty arrives, hairs grow, size of parts of your body change, and just being alive is embarrassing. Some teachers try to gradually de-genius you at school in their efforts to mold you, your spontaneous childlike quality dissipated to shape you into an adult. Albert Einstein, for example, considered school a hindrance to his education. When he was in the 7th grade, he was actually asked to leave school because he would occasionally ask questions his teachers couldn't answer. One of his teachers said, "Your mere presence spoils the respect of the class for me." That's because school is not only about education, it's about conditioning, getting you used to learning to conform. Also, as a child, through the media, you're constantly exposed to people who appear to have it all handled. The attractive, talented individuals who adorn the pages of magazines and TV programs, who've got perfect white teeth and skin and portrayed as happy and successful. All of these kind of things early in life bombards us with messages that suggest that somehow we're just not good enough. Then, of course, there are always people around with low self-esteem who covertly undermine us to make themselves feel better. Your self-image was bombarded with messages early in life that somehow suggested you weren't quite good enough. Research has shown that by the age of 14, 98% of children have a negative self-image. No wonder there are so many people who aren't achieving what they'd like to in life. Other people actually feel comfortable with their low opinion of themselves. When I tell them how easy it is to change their self-image, they actually think that they should feel guilty, deficient, or imperfect. They say, but I've screwed up plenty of times, or I've done bad things, or I'm a failure. So I say, yeah, maybe you're human. Everyone makes mistakes, gets things wrong from time to time, but everyone has problems. That's because problems help you learn and grow. Problems are how you become stronger and wiser. There's an old Zen saying, if you find a path with no obstacles, it probably doesn't lead anywhere. On the other hand, I'm not suggesting that you should be conceited or show off. We all know how irritating those people are, always telling us about how great they can be. The reason they're like that is because they're the most insecure of all. I'm simply suggesting that you accept and approve of yourself. It's important to accept compliments. Be proud of your achievements. If you went up to a highly successful person and congratulated them, do you think that they'd just brush it off and say, oh, no, it was just luck. Actually, my success is a fluke? No. They would probably say thank you and accept the compliment as a confirmation of their success. A couple of years ago, I met the actor Will Smith at a party. When I said to him that I admired his work and that I think he's a positive inspiration to lots of people, he stopped, looked at me, thought about what I'd said and replied, thank you. Thank you very much. All truly successful people accept their brilliance. They're not embarrassed by it. When you refuse to accept a compliment, you're invalidating yourself. So the next time someone pays you a compliment, thank them and accept it. In fact, I'm about to pay you one. I want you to know that you're unique. Nobody can do things exactly the way that you do them. You've got a special gift of uniqueness to bring to the world. Sometimes, when I have a client that has low self-esteem, I give them a copy of that classic film, It's a Wonderful Life. And after they've watched it, they ask themselves, if I hadn't been born, how many lives would be lacking because I wasn't around? Another example of how easily our self-image is shaped is through public commitment, and demonstrated by social psychologist Stephen J. Sherman, who made an amazing study. He set out to see if he could increase the number of volunteers in a given area that would go door to door collecting for the American Cancer Society. He contacted a number of residents in the area by phoning and explaining that he was doing a survey, and asked them to predict what they would say if they were asked to go door to door for 3 hours collecting. Of course, not wanting to seem uncharitable to the survey taker or themselves, they said that they would volunteer. The result of them committing themselves during the survey was a 700% increase in volunteers when an American Cancer Society representative called a few days later. That's why when I help people stop smoking, I get them to make a public commitment about stopping, particularly to one of those people who's likely to ask them out loud in front of everyone, how's your stopping smoking going? That's why in future, when people say to you, how are you? It's important to say something positive like, great, really fantastic, because then you've got something good to live up to. The clothes that you choose to wear presents an image to others that automatically causes them to make judgments about you. So give them reasons to make positive ones. You don't have to be in a suit all the time. Just being clean and neat can have a very good effect. Dress according to the impression, though, that you want to give. Then others will treat you the way that you want to be treated, which will give you a greater feeling of self-esteem. Often, it can be helpful to seek the advice of someone who you respect, maybe even a member of the opposite sex. As you can see, self-image is the result of the decisions or commitments that you've made about yourself. People will go to great lengths to protect their self-image, which is underpinned by their values. Therefore, I believe it's important to know who you are. There are many ways in which we can define ourselves. You could think of yourself as rich or gentle or an entrepreneur or shy or outgoing or old or young or any number of different things. The places we go, the movies, television programs we watch, the friends we have, the clothes we wear, the brands we buy, the car we drive, the job we do, all these things are a reflection of who we believe we are. Take a moment right now to find out who you think you are. Get a piece of paper and brainstorm. Ask yourself, who am I? How do I identify myself? If these ideas don't come at first, just write down some of the obvious things like, your job, your car, your status. You may find it helps to imagine yourself standing in front of yourself, look at yourself objectively, and ask, what kind of person is this in front of me? Having a good self-image will improve your relationships as well, because as you create a more positive self-image, you begin to see your self-appreciation reflected in the people you attract around you. Next, I'm going to show you how to program yourself to become the person you'd really like to be. You need to do this exercise every day for at least a week so your new self-image can easily integrate. Okay, here we go. I'd like you to imagine another you standing in front of you. The you that you'd ideally like to be, your ideal self. Perhaps that you is smarter, kinder, more creative. It's a you that feels good about yourself, that accepts and approves of yourself. Look at the way that ideal you stands, breathes, smiles, walks and talks. Look at how that ideal you talks to others, how others treat you with respect. Notice how you're so happy and confident in your relationships. Notice how you're so effective in your career. Now, when it's exactly the way you want it to be, pull that ideal you over and into yourself and see through the eyes of your ideal self. Hear through the ears of your ideal self and feel how good it feels to be more like your ideal self. Now, from your ideal self's perspective, think about how your life is going to be so much better. See what you'll see, hear what you'll hear, and feel how good you'll feel. Now, I want you to walk, talk, and think like your ideal self, like a method actor playing a part for the next week until it becomes second nature.
Positivity, positive software for your mind. Discover what you truly want in life and make your dreams come true.
We all have dreams, desires. Stop for a moment and ask yourself, what is one of your aspirations? Take a moment and just fantasize. Let your mind wander. As the Reverend Robert Schuller says, what would you do if you knew you couldn't fail? You've just done what all truly successful people do. Creative planning, goal setting, daydreaming, call it what you want. All the great creatives throughout history used this creative state of daydreaming to formulate their ideas. Einstein imagined riding on a beam of light, flashing a torch across at another in order to come up with a theory of relativity. Tesla could design a machine perfectly in his mind before he did it in the physical world. Michelangelo, Goethe, Mozart, Walt Disney all referred to the creative daydream state or reverie as a source of ideas. What they were doing was a form of self-hypnosis or a guided imagery technique. But why is it so important? Because for anything to happen in the real world, it first has to happen in the imaginary world. Stop for a moment and have a look around you. Most of what you can see once started as a thought in someone's head. The more you think thoughts of success, the more you become successful. In order for you to improve your life, you need to improve your thoughts. All of us need to do this creative activity of designing goals. Goals are very important. Viktor Frankl, the famous psychologist who wrote Man's Search for Meaning, talked about his experiences in a concentration camp during World War II. He made a personal study of why only 1 in 28 people survived. He observed that those who made it through were not necessarily the fittest, the healthiest, or the most intelligent. Mostly, those that survived, he believed, had a purpose to live, a goal. Goals were what kept them going. When the mind has a target, it can focus and direct itself until it reaches its goal. If you've got no targets, then your energy is dissipated. You may have heard the saying, you get back what you put out in life. So if you're putting out vagueness, then all you'll get back are wishy-washy half results. The way to change that is by having certain goals. As Reverend Robert Schuller also says, failing to plan is a plan to fail. Most people's goals are things like to get through the week. They don't actually stop and design the kind of life they truly want to have. Most people are like sheep. They just follow the herd. Less than 3% of Americans write down their goals. They just don't bother to design their destiny. They stumble through life, leaving things to chance, wondering why they feel bad. It's like going out in a boat without a rudder, getting tossed and turned by the waves. You could end up anywhere, rather than deliberately steering in the direction that you want to. Most people spend more time making a list for the supermarket, but don't bother to list the really important things in life that they want. Goal setting is one of those things that will make you better than the rest. The future is a good place to get interested in because you're going to be spending the rest of your life there. As humans, we need something to strive for. I'm sure you've heard about the importance of goals before. It's an important part of every motivational speaker's message. So some of what I'm going to say to you may have heard before, but the crucial difference is this time, we're going to help you program those goals directly into your unconscious mind so that they're easier to achieve. Often, what motivational speakers do is tell you what to do and then expect you to go out and do all the work. However, using the amazing techniques on the positivity system, we're going to help you discover what it is you truly want and then program those things into your mind so you focus on them like a laser beam, so you take control of your life and steer it in the direction that you want. When you have a goal, you have a purpose, a direction, and your mind needs that. In one sense, you could compare the mind with a heat-seeking missile. Its goals are its targets. If you're unclear about your targets, then how are you going to achieve your goals? You can't hit a target if you can't see it. This is worth knowing because while on course to achieving your goals, you may face setbacks, just as an aeroplane has to correct and change course on its way to a destination. That's why it's important to keep taking in feedback and adjusting to keep on target. Goals determine your direction, your energy levels, the edge of your limitations, what drives you, and ultimately what makes you successful. An even simpler way of saying this is, and it's a theme of the whole positivity system, you always get more of what you focus on. This can work positively or negatively. For example, some people spend all their time thinking of ways not to be fat. Of course, the problem with that is, in order to not anything, you first have to think about it. For example, what happens if I say to you, try not to think of elephants? You think of them, or the word, or something associated with them. Some people are always saying to themselves, why am I so fat? How can I not be fat anymore? So what are they thinking about fat? And reinforcing that negative suggestion. So remember, in future, always state your goals in the positive. For example, how am I most easily going to become thinner? One thing that all unhappy people that I've ever worked with have in common is that they know what they don't want. They don't like this, they don't like that. They spend so much time focusing upon what they don't want as opposed to what they do want. And guess what happens to them as repetition is the agent of success? By regularly concentrating on what you do want, you'll condition your mind to attract more of it to you. But goals are more than just achieving status or acquiring material things. Attaining your goals is fine, but what you learn and how you grow emotionally, intellectually, spiritually on the way is what really matters. Just as studying at university isn't just about working to get a piece of paper, it's about meeting people, having different experiences, seeing new ways of looking at the world. In other words, it's the journey as much as the arrival that counts. What you achieve is often not as important as who you become in the process. Because when you're working on a goal, the goal is working on you. In the 1960s, President Kennedy talked of putting a man on the moon. He told Americans, "We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they're easy, but because they're hard, because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills." Interestingly, many scientific discoveries completely unrelated with the space program happened as a result of that project. A gentleman on one of my seminars told me he'd created a goal for himself to be attaining a huge house, swimming pool, big car, yacht, and his family looking happy. Then I asked him, "But what about you?" And he looked puzzled. He said, "What about me?" Then suddenly realized he wasn't in the picture. I asked him, "What are you going to do? Work yourself into an early grave to afford more things for your family?" So he put a happy, healthy picture of himself in his goal image, and it made him feel so much better. So you can see why it's important to be precise and to have goals that truly help you. They focus your mind so you concentrate your energy in a particular direction. As Goethe said, "The greatest thing in this world is not so much where we stand, but in what direction we are moving." Goal setting is easy. Everyone can do it. In essence, this is all there is to it. Think of something you want. Imagine what it would be like to have it. Check to see if it's okay for you to have it. Think about how it might come about. And then focus your mind on that goal regularly. So now you know the basic idea of how creating goals works. Let's go through the 10 steps to successful goal setting together. As you do this, stop at each stage and take time to do each section properly.
Step 1. First of all, ask yourself, what do I really want? Brainstorm. Write down what comes to mind. You can organize it all later. You don't need to be specific at first. Just an outline will do for now. If you have any problems getting started, then ask yourself again, what would I do if I knew I couldn't fail? Don't be too surprised at some of the things that come up. Oh, and don't start thinking about how it's going to happen yet. Just let the creative process continue. Think about all the major areas in your life: family, relationships, career, spiritual development. What would you really like to learn? What skills do you want to master? How much money do you want to accumulate? What character traits do you want to develop? What do you want to give back to the world? Do you want health and vitality, wealth and character improvements? Choose things that really excite you. Some people ask themselves what they'd do if the world was going to end in just a week. This also puts you in touch with what's really important to you. As you do this, really imagine your goals in as much detail as possible. You need to really visualize them. By the way, everybody can visualize. For example, think of your front door. Which side is the handle on? And how do you know that? Because you see an image of it. Also, listen to the sounds that are part of your goals, and the feelings, the smells, the tastes. Create a rich internal experience of having your goals. Don't underestimate the power of your ideas. For example, money doesn't create ideas. It's ideas that create money. Einstein said, "Imagination is more important than knowledge." Disraeli said, "Imagination rules the world." So stop now, complete the exercise, and start it again when you've finished. Okay, step 2. Next, prioritize. Find your most important goals. Which goals are your top 3? Take the time now to go through all of them and find the most important of your 3 goals.
Make a list now and don't continue with the rest of this until you have.
Step 3. In a moment, I'm going to ask you to imagine having achieved one of your goals. And at the same time, ask yourself this question. What will having this goal give me? The reason for doing this is to discover the values that underpin your goals, to understand the essence of what really drives you. We get an insight into our values when one of them's violated. For example, if someone is disloyal to you, it's because you value loyalty that you felt upset. Values let you know what's important to you.
I remember on one of my seminars, a particular gentleman said that his top goal was money. So I asked him, what would that give you? He thought about it and imagined having lots of money and said, it'll give me a feeling of security and people will respect me. So what was really important to him was security and respect. So those were his values. Now, creating good feelings, in this case security and respect, are easy, as you've already discovered. So what he did was use some of the positivity techniques to make him feel much more secure and respect himself, and the money began to show up very quickly.
So when you ask yourself, what's important about a particular goal? What will achieving your goal do for you now? Specific words or a phrase will come to mind, like security, achievement, contributing to life, something that's specific to you. The words you choose will signify your values, what's most important to you in life. Because any goal you have is really just a way of fulfilling your values. Some people have a goal that's helping others, because they value making the world a better place. Someone else might have a goal of winning an Olympic medal, because they value human achievement. Let's discover what your values are now. Vividly imagine having achieved one of your goals. See what you'll see. Hear what you'll hear. Feel how good you'll feel. Now, ask yourself, what does achieving this goal give you? What's important to you about this goal? Notice what words or phrases come to mind. Keep doing this until you have a list of words and phrases that represent your values. Now, ask yourself, what's important to you about all of these values? This is your most prized value. It's at the very core of what drives you in life. So now, you should have a detailed list of your most important goals. Maybe a new house, promotion, wealth, and so on. And what having those things will give you, your values: confidence, security, enhanced self-esteem, a feeling of achievement. Okay, let's move on. Step 4, your life's purpose. Dr. Charles Garfield, the author of Peak Performers, New Heroes in American Business, found that peak performers are committed to just such a purpose. In fact, all the great achievers in history had this factor in common. They had a definite purpose. Having goals is good. Knowing your values is important. But how do they figure in your life's purpose? Motivational speakers talk endlessly about goals without considering the importance of values and purpose. For example, many people's goals exclusively focus on money, pursuing it as an end in itself, believing that when they have enough of it, they can do what they really want. I've worked with a number of people who are at the end of their lives. I've asked some of them, what do you wish you'd done more of and less of? None of them said, I wish I had another Mercedes. They said things like, I wish I'd laughed more, or loved more. I wish I'd spent less time worrying. There's a saying that the best things in life are not things. Of course, money and fame can be blessings, but just acquiring symbols of success will not necessarily make us any happier. Only you know what you truly want. The way to find your life's purpose is to ask yourself, what do you love to do so much that you'd pay to do it? Ask yourself, what do you really feel passionate about? Ask yourself, what would you choose to do if you had unlimited financial wealth? Ask yourself, what are the people or characters from history who you most admire, and why? Ask yourself, if you could achieve anything that you wanted this lifetime, what would it be? Answering these questions will help you to get an overall idea of what your life's purpose is about. Steven Spielberg decided his life's purpose was to be a storyteller. He achieves this through movies. Martin Luther King was a minister. His life's purpose was to be an inspirational leader to millions. Your life's purpose doesn't have to be to change the world. being a good citizen in itself is a noble purpose. Step 5. How will you know when you've achieved your goal? Some people have no way of knowing because they don't have a day-to-day method of measuring whether they're on course or not. The solution is simple. Be specific and have a validation procedure. You need to have sensory-based information. What will you see when you achieve your goal? What will you hear? What will you feel? What will you smell and taste? This will give you a way of knowing if you're getting nearer or further away from your goals. Some people place the validation too far in the future. They only see the end result, a big house or car, or they hold off their happiness until they achieve these. You need some signposts of success on the way. These could be smaller goals. On the way to great wealth, there may be smaller but significant amounts of wealth that let you know that you're heading in the right direction. Think of the smaller steps on the way to achieving your bigger goals. Step 6. Now, do what we call an appropriateness check. As you project into the future, check to see that having your goals is genuinely for your good and doesn't harm others. Sometimes on our way to achieving a goal, we can overlook important factors. What good is business success if it's at the cost of your health? Also, check that your goals are in your control and not dependent on others having to change themselves to make you happy. So your goal should be something that you can directly make happen. And then check to see that there aren't any hidden rewards for you not achieving a goal. Also, make sure that they're your goals. Some people choose a profession to please their parents rather than themselves. Do that now. Step 7. Knowing you're on track is easier when you have a timeline of events that need to take place in a sequence that lead you to your goal. So, get an idea of the time it will take you to achieve one of your goals. A month, 6 months, a year, whatever the length of time. Then, working back from your outcome, the big house or the car or whatever, figure out the major steps that will need to take place on the way to you achieving your goal, and then write down those steps. If you like, vividly live those steps. See what you'll see, hear what you'll hear, feel how good you'll feel as you achieve each step on the way to getting your goal. It helps to get a clear, big, bright image of each step. So you need to think through the final result and the steps that lead you there. Next, we're going to do an experiment to find out how you organize time in your mind. Dr. Richard Bandler, the founder of NLP, developed a wonderful technique called timelines. This is how it works. Think of some activity that you do every day, like brushing your teeth or getting dressed. Think about doing it tomorrow, and notice that an image comes to mind. Notice where you make that image in your mind. Is it in front of you? Is it to the left or the right? Next, think about doing that activity a week from now, and notice where you make the picture. Is the image in front of you? Is it to the left or the right? Is it further away than the other image? Whereabouts is it? Next, think about doing that activity 6 months from now, and once again, notice its location. Is it right in front of you? The left? The right? Is it further away? Whereabouts is it? As you look at the locations of the images, you're able to see time moves in a particular direction for you. Does the future extend out in front of you? Or does it run from left to right, like a strip of movie film? Does it curve in a particular direction? Where's the past? Is it behind you, or is it somewhere else? Take a moment to understand the direction that time moves for you in your mind. A small number of people have no specific direction. They just have everything in front of them. By looking at the direction of time with that activity you chose a few moments ago, you can see where you represent present time and how it leads to your future. We call this your timeline. Step 8. Stop and ask yourself, what's likely to get in the way of me achieving my goal? Think of what the obstacles are, because by knowing the problems in advance, you'll find it easier to overcome them. Lack of specialized knowledge, space, time, money. Will you have enough confidence to achieve your goals? Do you start things and then not finish them? Will some people not take you seriously? What kind of obstacles? Write them down. Projecting into the future and foreseeing obstacles gives the benefit of hindsight before you achieve something. Next, ask yourself, what am I going to need to do to overcome these obstacles? Who will I have to become? What kind of character traits will I have to develop? It's really important to handle these problems as early as possible. Then you'll be more confident about succeeding. Next, think of some times in the past when you've exhibited those positive character traits or similar ones. Or imagine what it would be like if you did have those qualities. For example, if it's, say, confidence, think of what it would be like if you were totally confident, filled with inner certainty and optimism. Then imagine how you would approach one of your goals. Notice the difference in your attitude and the way your behavior changes as a result. Step 9. Make a list of all the resources that you have. Just as if you were going off on a holiday, you'd want to pack all the things you'd need so that you could really enjoy yourself. I mean, make a list of everything that's a resource. Friends, skills, education, finances, time, health, character traits, where you live. Something like a telephone can mean world communication. Transport or access to it means potentially you can go almost anywhere. What resources and potential resources do you have?
Make a list now and don't continue with the rest of this until you have.
Step 10. Now, take those different goals and design them into your ideal day. How does it start? Imagine the kind of people you have around you, the places you go, things you have, how good you feel. Go into it in minute detail. When you do this, you are designing, so make it right. Make it so it feels really good. When you do it, go on your ideal day. What are some of the things that let you know how successful you are? Like Tesla, design your ideal day in precise detail. Let your unconscious know exactly what it is that you want. Let it encode into your neurology, because remember, for anything to happen in your life, it first has to happen as a thought in your mind.
Well done. You've just taken a great leap forward by designing your destiny. Years ago, I sat down and asked myself, if I continue along the present course that I'm on, where will I end up? Where will I be in 5 years from now? I was shocked to realize that I wouldn't be any more fulfilled, spiritually, emotionally, or financially. I'd just be a bit older, a little more paranoid, living from day to day. So I asked questions, and I did visualizations just like you've done. The results were incredible. I immediately began to feel better. I then rehearsed in my imagination having what I wanted, just as we are going to do later in this audio program. I suddenly found I had more energy. My finances took on an incredible upturn. I became known in over 42 countries. Rock stars, movie stars, even royalty wanted to work with me. And then I began to attract around me the kind of people that I'd always wanted to. When I walk down the street now, I'm struck by how much wealth there is in the world. You know, once there was nothing. And look how much there is now. Which brings us to the next golden rule of success.
All top athletes use mental rehearsal techniques. That is, imagining the game, race, or event going as they want it to, over and over again in their imagination. It works on a simple principle. Your nervous system doesn't know the difference between a real or a vividly imagined experience. That's why all simple positive thinking stuff doesn't really work. Just saying to yourself, day by day, in every way, I get better and better, won't necessarily make any difference. Just as if you said to your heartbeat, speed up, it won't go any faster. But if you imagined walking down a dark alley at night, hearing footsteps behind you, your heartbeat would speed up. The same rule applies to goals. To make sure you attain them, you must condition your nervous system to expect them. At least twice a day, take the time to vividly imagine and immerse yourself in the experience of achieving and living your goals. For example, when I work with a client who has a fear of public speaking, I get them to rehearse in their imagination speaking to a group of people confidently and successfully, again and again, so that when they come to do it for real, they have lots of past successes to draw upon and feel good about.
So remember, you always get more of what you focus on in life. So focus on your goals and do it every day. Your unconscious mind only wants to make you happy, but you have to let it know what it is you want again and again every day. As Ralph Waldo Emerson said, a man becomes what he thinks about most of the time. Now, you've some goals to think about continually, morning, noon, and night. Turn your goals into an obsession. As you regularly do that, you encode that new cybernetic map into your mind, and that'll guide you to a destiny of happiness, abundance, and fulfillment. Keep your mind focused as you fall asleep at night on what it is that you want. Make a scrapbook. Have a picture or a symbol of your goals so that you can concentrate on them every day. Turn your goals into an obsession.
Finally, take action. If all you had to do was think about what you wanted and it magically showed up a few seconds later, everyone would be driving Mercedes, living in mansion houses, wearing expensive jewelry with beautiful lovers. It would also be havoc if everything you ever thought of just suddenly manifested. That's why the universe puts one more step in between you thinking of what you want and you actually getting it. All the planning you've just done is futile if you don't follow the next golden rule. Take action. As General George Patton said, a good plan violently executed right now is far better than a perfect plan carried out next week. It's really important to keep the momentum of the enthusiasm you've already created. Think of at least one thing you can do today to help you achieve your goal, and then do it. Even a small step is fine. For example, a phone call will do. It's simple. Fantasize, rehearse, then go out into the world and do it.
Positivity. Positive software for your mind. How to use the powerful beliefs of geniuses and highly successful people.
Having an intellectual understanding of what an effective person does won't necessarily make any difference to you. Some of the techniques we're about to do will instill powerful new beliefs, which in turn will create new behaviors that will make you a more successful and effective person. So let's talk about the power of beliefs. Over the years, I've often seen how one belief can mean the difference between success or failure, the difference between ordinary workers and CEOs, ordinary competitors and world champions. Our beliefs can determine our intelligence, our health, the quality of our relationships, our happiness and success. If while you're listening anything I say contradicts your beliefs, just stop and say to yourself, I can't believe that. Not because it breaches the truth, but because it breaches one of your beliefs. For example, it doesn't matter how far you travel around the world, you won't fall off it. But if you believe the earth is flat, that would restrict your travel, and your experience of life would be very different from someone who didn't hold that belief. For hundreds of years, scientists have argued over the truth about light being particle or wave, theories that totally contradict one another. Interestingly, Light has the characteristics of both. The truth about light, or the Earth being flat or round, depends upon the century in which you live. Beliefs, if you like, are the map, the blueprint through which you filter the world. Your beliefs determine your decisions, how you feel about things, and ultimately the direction you go in life. They control everything about you. Beliefs are psychological tools, the building blocks of your perception. Some of your beliefs may be positive and support you, some may not, and you may be unconscious of them. I've found from working with people that everyone possesses some beliefs that don't ultimately support them. It might be a poverty belief, like there won't be enough to go round. This sort of belief can make someone into a workaholic, or someone who's always preparing for disasters that never happen. Or it might be a self-sabotage belief, like I'm not worthy. Or a self-pity belief, like only some people are born lucky. One reason it's so important to change negative beliefs is because if your mind is convinced of something, it will set about proving it right, like a self-fulfilling prophecy, so they can work for you or against you. Your beliefs are filters upon how you perceive the world, like a filter on a camera, designed to distort an image or to make it look a particular way. Whatever you experience in life will always be through the filter of your beliefs. For some people, snow has a negative meaning, cold, driving hazards, etc. For others, it means childish games, fun. The attitude you have about snow will be determined by your beliefs. To go one step further, if someone has beliefs about themselves being unattractive, their mind will distort or even delete, in some cases, signals of attraction from others. That's because it's a primary function of the mind to confirm what it believes. So if you're wondering generally what your beliefs are, look at how you feel about life. Not what happens to you, but how you feel about things. Do you feel exceptional levels of happiness most of the time? If not, then listen carefully. The really amazing thing about beliefs is that they're easy to change. The positivity system will show you how to evaluate your beliefs and be able to change them. As I've already said, your beliefs are formed early in life, often erratically by chance events and the opinions of those around you. So what I'd like you to do is stop for a moment and consider, what will you have to believe in order to become the person you want to be? Take the time to write them down. Don't start again until you've done that. Next, let's do a technique that will enable you to believe and do amazing positive new things. Stop for a moment and imagine over to your right is another you. A you that holds a belief that you'd like to have. Then imagine what having that belief will enable that other you to achieve. Next, see that other you doing those things that the positive belief enables that other you to do. Maybe that other you is very motivated or confident, strong or successful. Now, watch that other you doing those things naturally that come from that successful belief. Notice the internal dialogue that the other you has that come from that new belief you operate from. If it isn't quite how you want it, make the adjustments that make you feel better by allowing your intuition to guide you. When you're satisfied with that other you, and you want to be that other you, have that other you float over and into you. Take the new belief and behaviors into you. Now, think through what it's like to have that new belief and what it will help you achieve. How are things going to be so much better? The human mind generalizes as a learning principle. For example, as a child you learn how a door works. Then your mind generalizes about all doors everywhere so that you can walk in and out of a room easily. Otherwise you'd have to relearn how to go in and out of a room each time. The mind generalizes as part of its learning mechanism. However, it doesn't discriminate between positive and negative experiences. Phobias are examples of this. If someone's bitten by a dog, their mind, in order to protect them, may generalize about all dogs everywhere. The same can happen to people who have experienced failures. They might generalize about failing and no longer believe they can produce the results they want, so they stop taking any action at all. And this leads to a condition known as learned helplessness. However, there are some people who've generalized about their ability to succeed. They cannot help but be successful, whatever it is they do. These programs for success and failure are stored in the unconscious mind, and we're going to remove the old negative beliefs and install positive new ones that enhance and support you. Henry Ford said, "Whether you think you can do something or whether you think you can't, you're usually right." What he meant by this was that if you say you can't do something, then you shut out all those parts of your mind that make your achievement possible. If you say you can do something, you open up to the possibilities. For centuries, people had thought that it was impossible to run a 4-minute mile. Then, in the 1950s, Roger Bannister achieved it. Recently, I met Dr. Bannister. We talked about how amazing it was that within a year of him breaking the record, 37 other people around the world did as well. In the following year, 300 runners broke the 4-minute mile. Why hadn't they before? It was because Roger Bannister had proved that it was possible. Suddenly, others believed they could too. And that change in belief was what made the difference. Many great people haven't succeeded because they were born holding a good hand of cards. They learned from playing a good hand well. So ask yourself now, what advantages do you have that they didn't? Along with other researchers, I've found that nearly all highly successful people have a core of specific character traits. Many of those characteristics are contained in the positivity system, and you've been absorbing them into your mind. There are many beliefs worth having. In a moment, I'm going to share with you the successful beliefs that many high achievers have at the core of their being. These beliefs are extremely useful presuppositions or assumptions about yourself, life, the world. Whether these presuppositions are true or not isn't important. When you act as though they are, you create a more resourceful perspective. So I recommend you operate out of these assumptions if you don't already. 1. There's no such thing as failure, only feedback. Every response is only information that can be used to tell whether you are being effective or not. Just as when an aeroplane flies to its destination, it's continually correcting course, constantly adjusting to keep on course. Thomas Watson, the founder of IBM, said, "If you want to double your success rate, you have to be prepared to double your failure rate first." Success lies on the far side of failure. It's a fact that winners make more mistakes than losers. You might not feel comfortable making mistakes or failures, but they are great learning opportunities. As the saying goes, adversity reveals genius, prosperity conceals it. 2. Anything can be accomplished if the task is broken down into small enough chunks. Any skill can be learned, any idea digested, if it's broken down into small enough pieces. A few years ago, a crazy Frenchman ate an aeroplane over a period of a few months by breaking it down into tiny pieces. That's how, for example, we remember telephone numbers. 310, 859, etc. When you look at huge tasks like this, they become much more possible. If you wanted to knock down a wall, instead of trying to do it all at once, do it one brick at a time. 3. Communication is not what you intend in what you say, but it's about the response and experience you create in the listener. This is a core belief in all masters of communication. This is a responsible way to communicate. Communication elicits outcomes. But are you getting the outcomes that you want? If not, it's a reflection of your communication. If you say something to someone and they take offense, rather than blame them and the communication gets stuck, if you're responsible, you're in control, you have the power to change things. If you don't have a choice, then you're just a robot. But if you keep changing your communication until you find the way that elicits the desired response, you're a master communicator. 4. If what you're doing isn't working, try something else. As the saying goes, if you go on doing what you've always done, you'll just go on getting more of what you've already got. I often hear people who are stuck say, "But I've always done it like that," or "I'm just not that kind of person." To quote Richard Bach's wonderful spiritual book Illusions, argue for your limitations and they're yours. If you want something different to happen, then try something different. If you haven't discovered yet what that is, try virtually anything else. 5. Everything happens for a reason. This belief focuses your attention on what's positive in a situation. All successful people operate out of one version or another of this belief. Some people prefer to say, "Everything happens for a reason." Because even if it's not true, it doesn't matter. Believing this puts you in a more resourceful state of mind. Those people who prefer to say, "It's not fair,"
just get to feel ineffectual. If you assume that in some way a problem helps you, you become more positive. I'm not suggesting that we should always look at life through rose-colored spectacles. There's no fixed meaning in life except the meaning we create, so create meanings that are empowering. It's easy for some people to sit around and blame others for their problem and not bother to try and succeed in case they fail. An extension of this positive belief is the concept of pronoia. I'm sure you're familiar with the idea of paranoia. Well, pronoia is the opposite. Pronoia is the idea that everyone is actively conspiring to help you succeed. Because it's a conspiracy, though, they're doing it in secret, so they disguise the help they're giving you sometimes. 6. For highly effective people, when something occurs that others would think of as a disaster, they actually say to themselves, "How does this help me?" And they mean it. One thing I'm always keen to emphasize is that I don't have all the answers. I still have challenges and issues to deal with, because challenges are how you learn and grow. Although I don't always feel great when one of these challenges occurs, I respect the learning opportunity it brings. As the saying goes, we're constantly faced with great opportunities, brilliantly disguised as insoluble problems. If you didn't have any problems at all, it'd be great for the first few years. Then eventually you'd want some kind of challenge, something to stretch your abilities. The easiest way to begin to make this new belief work for you is to start small. Look at little problems as challenges at first, then move on to bigger ones. 7. Your past does not automatically equal your future. Some people limit their possibilities by saying, "Oh well, I'm just this kind of person. I was born like that." At any point in your life, you can change. Since I started working with people, I've seen individuals make incredible changes, people who were supposedly incurable cases. There's a powerful technique that I want to share with you now that will help you to learn to act and think like a successful person. It's called accelerated unconscious learning. Are there people that you'd like to emulate? People who you'd like to be like? Even though you might think that some people are wiser, more talented, or just more optimistic than you, whatever it is that they do well, it's created from a particular sequence of thoughts and behaviors that have been practiced until they became an automatic behavior for them. Babies are not born persuasive, creative, or great tennis players. They learn how to do it. Unconscious learning is how humans learn naturally and spontaneously. It's different to how we learn at school. As a child, you watched how your parents walked and you copied it. It's the same with driving an automobile. For years, you watched how others did it, and then you learned to do a complex set of motor activities and judgments yourself until it became automatic. Of course, trial and error is the means we usually use to learn something. When a baby learns to walk, they fall over a few times before eventually they get their balance. But essentially, they're just emulating what their parents do. At school, they teach in a linear fashion, one piece of information at a time in a sequence. But the unconscious, however, is capable of processing millions of bits of information every second. It's like a sponge, soaking up sensory and other information from all around. You can learn all sorts of things just copying other people. Many people become good cooks by copying their parents. I learned to shave by copying what my father did. There's a particular technique that we'll do shortly that helps you become like the person you wish to emulate really quickly and easily. In order for it to work properly, you must have witnessed a demonstration of the particular skill you wish to have by someone who possesses it. If you want to be, say, a great golfer, you need to watch many examples of great golfers playing to their peak of their abilities in real life or on television. For example, when I first started working on television, I got a stack of videos of people who I thought were really confident, natural, and personable on TV. These were qualities I admired in all kinds of different personalities. I sat and watched the videos again and again, as if I was going to learn to impersonate them. Then I relaxed, closed my eyes, and replayed the images in my mind of my role models in action. And one by one, imagined stepping into their bodies, like putting on a new suit of clothes, standing the way they stood, moving the way they moved, speaking in the same tone, in the same rhythm that they spoke. It was amazing. I felt totally different, a sort of relaxed alertness. It all seemed so much easier, looking at the world from the perspective of these successful TV broadcasters. I kept doing that over and over again to let the learnings absorb into my mind and body. There's so much going on when you're learning from the inside that to try and figure it all out consciously would be impossible. So by copying their behavior, by acting like them, duplicating what your role model does, you learn it intuitively, because the unconscious mind can process millions of bits of information every second. Stand, breathe, smile, talk, move the way they do, and amazingly, you begin to have the same quality of thoughts they do as well. Remember, the mind and body are intimately linked. So if you operate your body in the same way that someone else does, you start to get the same quality of thoughts. Okay, let's do a role modeling exercise. This is just like a thought experiment. You don't have to go into a deep trance or anything like that. However, do not do this technique while driving or operating machinery. Only do it when you can safely relax completely. So, first of all, relax and close your eyes. Think of someone who you wish to emulate, someone who has a skill that you wish to acquire. Consider who that might be. Think for a moment and choose somebody you really admire, someone who's really good. When you have that person in mind, next think of a time when they exhibited the skill or talent that you wish to learn. Now, run through that memory of your role model performing that particular skill. See it from start through to finish. Do it several times, or if it helps, see it in slow motion. Now, go over to your role model and step into them like putting on a new suit of clothes, and run through the memory of them performing that skill from the inside. See what they see, hear what they hear, and feel how they feel. Do it now. That's it. Let the learnings encode and absorb into your neurology and physiology. And when you've done that, do it again, this time noticing more. Get the general sense of what it is your role model does. If you want, you can try it in slow motion to get a different perspective. See what they see, hear what they hear, feel what they feel. Let the learnings absorb. When you've finished, step back out and thank your role model, and bring your learnings back to normal waking consciousness with you.
Congratulations, you've just finished unconscious learning from a master of excellence. Next, we'll reprogram your mind with the beliefs of geniuses, highly successful people, and great achievers, so you automatically begin to operate out of the same successful mindset.
Positivity, positive software for your mind. Change your life with the power of a positive perspective.
In much the same way that a photographer tells you what's important in a picture by what he decides to include in the frame and what's left out, the meaning of events in our lives are determined by what we choose to be important or not. The meaning of any situation depends on what we include or exclude in our frame of perception. Some people always manage to look at things in a positive way. They have an ability to what we call reframe any situation to leave them feeling empowered and strong. Depending upon the meaning we give to situations or events, we'll feel and behave differently. Perhaps one of the most important concepts in the entire positivity system is there's no fixed meaning in anything in life. It's always affected by the point of view that you bring. The art of reframing is not looking at the world through rose-colored spectacles, but having flexibility in your perception in a way that empowers you and others. For example, a glass of water can be half full or half empty, depending upon your individual frame of perception. Or, no matter how thinly you slice something, there's always two sides to it. A highly effective communicator can reframe anything to create a different perspective or interpretation. The job of advertisers is to frame their products in the best possible light. They do it by creating the idea that somehow what they're selling will make you sexier or healthier or happier or more stylish. Public relations is about arranging the truths to put across your point. The famous story of the army general who said, "We're not retreating, we're advancing in another direction," is a good example of reframing. But one of the ideas I want to share with you is, if you don't take responsibility for the frames you make in your life, then someone else will. Advertisers, politicians, religions, and others are all placing their products, services, or view of how we should lead our lives in contexts that make them seem to be sophisticated, sexy, the right thing to do so that they can get you to do things their way. The advantage of being able to decide how you frame events is that it gives you more choices. When I'm working with children who have to go through an unpleasant medical procedure, I reframe it by turning it into a game. In fact, many children's stories, like The Ugly Duckling that turns into a swan, are empowering reframes. One of the most important lessons that I've learned from working with people over the years that failure is an attitude rather than an outcome and is determined by how you frame things. For example, after Edison's 700th unsuccessful attempt to invent the electric light, he was asked by a New York Times reporter, "How does it feel to have failed 700 times?" The great inventor responded, "I've not failed 700 times. I've not failed once. I've succeeded in proving that those 700 ways will not work. When I've eliminated the ways that won't work, I will find the way that will work." Several thousand more of these successes followed. Edison finally found the way that would work and invented the electric light. Edison framed this particular challenge in a way that helped to keep him motivated. He was flexible enough in his thinking to give himself more choices. If you think back and remember some of the mistakes you've made, just consider for a moment what you've learned from them. That's one benefit for a start. One of my favorite quotes comes from the man who started IBM, Thomas Watson, who said that if you want to double your success rate, you have to be prepared to double your failure rate. In that context, mistakes instantly take on a new meaning. Through stories, we can often look at things in different ways, because it's happening to someone else and not directly to us, so it's not challenging. For example, there's an old story about two traveling angels who stopped to spend the night at the home of a wealthy family. The family was rude and refused to let the angels stay in the mansion's guest room. Instead, the angels were given a small space in the cold basement. As they made their bed on the hard floor, the older angel saw a hole in the wall and repaired it. When the younger angel asked him why, the older angel replied, "Things aren't always what they seem." The next night, the pair came to rest at the house of a very poor but very hospitable farmer and his wife. After sharing what little food they had, the couple let the angels sleep in their bed, where they could have had a good night's rest. When the sun came up the next morning, the angels found the farmer and his wife in tears. Their only cow, whose milk had been their sole income, lay dead in the field. The younger angel was infuriated and asked the older angel, "How could you let this happen?" "The first man had everything, yet you helped him," she accused. "The second family had little, but was willing to share everything, and you let the cow die." "Things aren't always what they seem," the older angel replied. "When we stayed in the basement of the mansion, I noticed there was gold stored in a hole in the wall. Since the owner was so obsessed with greed and unwilling to share his good fortune, I sealed the wall so he wouldn't find it. Then last night, as we slept in the farmer's bed, the angel of death came for his wife. I gave him the cow instead. Things aren't always what they seem. One of the great messages of this story is that everything is relative. When you think one situation's bad, compared to something else, it's not. I've noticed that some people have amazing faith, trusting that everything happens for a reason, even though you might not know it until some time later. Another example of a brilliant reframe comes in the form of a letter from a college student to her parents. It goes like this: Dear Mum and Dad, apologies for taking so long to write, but my writing utensils were destroyed in the fire at my apartment. I'm out of the hospital and the doctor says that I should be able to lead a normal, healthy life. A handsome young man called Pete saved me from the fire and kindly offered to share his apartment with me. He's very kind and polite and from a good family, so I think you'll approve when I tell you that we got married last week. I know you'll be even more excited when I tell you that you're going to be grandparents very soon. Actually, there wasn't a fire. I haven't been in hospital, I'm not married, and I'm not pregnant, but I did fail my maths exam and I wanted to make sure that you put it in a proper perspective. Love, your daughter. Scientists refer to the law of requisite variety, which can also be understood as the most flexible part of any system will survive the longest. Similarly, researchers have also found that often the most powerful person in any group is the most flexible. The individual with the most choices is the one who has the most ways of looking at things, the greatest variety of behaviors, and hence the greatest possibilities of control. Learning to use reframing is learning to increase your opportunities, which increases your flexibility, which increases your power. Some therapists believe that acknowledging that a trauma is in the past and has ended is a powerful and very healing reframe in itself. Many highly successful achievers do not comprehend anything that happens to them as a disaster or a tragedy because they always frame it as a challenge or an opportunity. They achieve this when a challenge occurs by asking themselves, how does this help me? In order to achieve this, you have to look at the situation in a way that puts it into a positive context. It doesn't matter if it's true or not, as long as you become empowered. In a philosophical sense, there's no such thing as absolute ultimate truth, only subjective perception. When Einstein said that a problem cannot be solved at the same level at which it was created, he meant that often we need to reframe our perspective to get an answer. Here's a reframe that's very helpful with respect to emotions. Many people talk about their emotions as though they were beyond their control, and some are to be avoided at all costs. Emotions are just signals. Emotions just want to make us aware of something. Fear, for example, makes us aware of danger. Happiness can signal that we've done something to enrich our lives, so we repeat it. Sometimes our emotions make the signal too strong, but you can always negotiate with them. The next time you feel anxious, stop and ask yourself, what is it that you want to make me aware of? There's probably a part of you that wants to protect you. It might just be trying too hard. Then, when you've considered what you can do to protect yourself, thank the feeling and ask it to find a less extreme way of communicating with you in future. So next time it wants to alert you, you won't feel overly anxious. We all know people who can frame anything in a context of doom and gloom. One of my clients had a fear of success, which had evolved from something his mother had told him as a child. He'd said one day that when he grew up, he wanted to be successful, and his mother promptly told him that he didn't want to be successful because successful people had heart attacks. Of course, there's no logic in that statement, but as a child, he didn't know that. It was only years later, looking at it from his adult viewpoint and seeing that it had no validity, that he could reframe the idea and put it into a new context. His mother was trying to help him, to protect him with her limited knowledge at the time. However, for every negative perspective, there's a counter-positive reframe. We all know people who work as hard on their unhappiness as others do on feeling good. They build up a view of life that says that they're victimized. They're great at negatively reframing things. Instead of noticing the beautiful view, they just see the dirty window. Abraham Lincoln said, "Most people are about as happy as they make up their minds to be." It's you who gets to decide what you think. So condition your mind by reframing things in a positive way again and again and again, every day. In a moment, we're going to do a great reframing technique that uses questions to make you focus on the positive. We're constantly affecting our state by the questions we ask ourselves. This is because the nature of the conscious mind is to continually evaluate, analyze, criticize, compare, and question. Most of our thinking is made up of the questions we ask and answer ourselves. It's simple. The results you're currently getting in your life are profoundly influenced by the questions you're asking yourself. One of the reasons Einstein was able to think of things that no one else was because he asked better questions. Questions determine the focus of our perception, the amount of success and failure, the amount of love, fear, anger, joy, or wonder that we experience. As you examine your inner questions, ask yourself, how much more empowering can you make them? Some of the people I've worked with were stuck in pain because they were continually asking themselves negatively oriented questions like, why can't I do this? This question presupposes that you can't. In order to answer it, you have to assume that you can't, and so your mind automatically begins to go on a search to find all the reasons why you can't. Alternatively, if you ask, how can I make this work? This question presupposes something different, that this can work, and your mind goes on a search for different information. Changing your state is as easy as asking new questions, because new questions equal new answers, which equals new states, which equals new outcomes. If you want to experience better states, ask better questions. Questions direct your focus, and as I'm sure you remember, you always get more of what you focus on in life. If your quality of life is poor, then one of the factors is almost certainly going to be the questions that you're continually asking yourself. Some examples of common but unhelpful questions are, why does this always happen to me? Why don't I like myself? Why am I unable to lose weight? That's because they presuppose the worst. When you ask yourself questions like that, you can only get disempowering answers back. Why do I always screw up? How can you answer that with anything but because you're stupid or unlucky or other people are smarter than you? Instead, if you ask yourself, how can I make sure that I don't make that mistake in future and make sure that I succeed, you'll find you get much more empowered. Think of any area in your life where you're not getting the quality of results you want and ask yourself, what are the questions I'm asking myself in this area? Then, ask yourself a new question. How can I ask this in a way that points towards the positive? Start asking questions that presuppose the positive, like, what is the most elegant way I can solve this problem? How many ways of solving this problem can I come up with? Or how can I most easily stop doing whatever it is? These questions make your brain sort for different information and put you in a different and more resourceful state. When you ask one of these questions, if you're not happy with the answer you get back, then either change the question or ask it again and again and again. Keep asking it until you are happy. Your brain will keep searching for you. Sometimes when I have a creative problem, I keep asking, how can I solve this problem over and over again until the answer comes? Or I relax into a nice meditation or trance and ask my unconscious mind, how many new ways of looking at this can you show me now? Here's a technique that I use regularly to put myself in a resourceful state. Let's do it together now. Think about it. Who or what in your life makes you feel happiest? Now, if you can't think of something, ask yourself, who or what in my life could make me feel happiest? Now let's amplify that feeling. Make the image bigger, brighter, bolder. Make the sounds louder and the feelings stronger. Notice where those feelings are strongest. Give them a color. Now move that color up to the top of your head, down to the tip of your toes. Make it twice as bright. That's good. Now ask yourself, who or what in my life makes me feel most loved? Once again, make the image brighter and bolder. Make the sounds louder, the feelings stronger. Notice where the feelings are strongest. Give them a color. Move that color up to the top of your head. Move it down to the tip of your toes. And double the brightness. That's right. Now ask yourself, who or what in my life makes me feel richest? Once again, make the image big and bright and bold. Make the sounds loud and the feelings strong. That's right. Notice where the feelings are strongest. Give them a color. Move that color up to the top of your head, down to the tip of your toes. Double the brightness and double it again. That's right. Now ask yourself, who or what in your life makes you feel most passionate? And then, as you think about that, make the image big and bright and bold. The sounds loud. The feelings strong. Give the feelings a color. Move the color to the top of your head, down to the tip of your toes. Double the brightness. Double it and double it again. That's right, until you're glowing with this good feeling. Now, finally, ask yourself, who or what in my life makes me feel most empowered? Once again, make the image bigger and brighter and bolder. The sounds louder and the feelings stronger. Notice where those feelings are strongest. Give them a color. Move that color up to the top of your head, down to the tip of your toes. Double the brightness and double it again until you feel absolutely fantastic. As you go through this ritual of building this super state each day, it has a powerful accumulative effect. And soon you begin to experience life in a completely different way. Instead of manipulating the world into making you feel good, you begin each day feeling the way you want to. Don't take my word for it. Do it every day for the next week. Years ago, when I first began working in the area of stress control with corporations, I noticed that some people had the idea it was a fad that only executives used. I created a different frame for my stress control work that gave it more value by explaining that not only does stress control training enhance what you already do, but also it's likely to lengthen your life. Looking at things in the context of your life can bring about all kinds of revelations. Sometimes I suggest to a client that they go to the end of their life and look back, asking themselves, what do they wish they'd done more of, and what do they wish they'd done less of? The answers people give me are very varied, but usually it's things like they wish they'd loved more or laughed more and worried less. This perspective can be transformational. I recommend you try it. It's important how you frame your work. You could look at work as boring or a chance to travel, meet people, make money. It's also a good idea to attach positive values to your job. There are infinite ways to look at things. You could say that this job is harder and more frustrating than I thought, or you could look at it as more of a challenge than I expected. One of the things that's most amazing about the human mind is its infinite resourcefulness. You can process millions of bits of information every second. Even though the mind is often compared to a computer, its complexity is far beyond any computer that could presently be built by humans. One way it can help you even more is to solve problems. Your mind can run millions of 3D scenarios like little soap operas in just seconds. Or when you're asleep, it can compute the best possible course of action for you to solve a particular problem. Have you ever tried that? Before you go to sleep, think of a problem for a moment, imagine how good you'll feel when you've solved it, ask yourself for a solution, and then go to sleep while your mind works it out. Creative imagination like that helped the great Indian leader Gandhi. He'd imagine seeing the situation through the eyes of a Hindu person, a Muslim person, and a British person. He'd imagine stepping into their shoes, thinking their thoughts, which gave him valuable insights. Seeing from many perspectives gave him flexibility in his thinking and actions that helped him become a legendary negotiator. Perhaps you'd like to try a similar technique now. Think of somebody you have a problem with. Maybe you don't like them, they don't like you, or they don't understand you. Imagine that person is standing in front of you. Notice what you see, your internal dialogue, and how you feel. Next, float out of yourself and let those feelings go. Now, float into the shoes of that person that you don't get along with. Notice how they see you and the world, their internal dialogue, and how they feel. Next, float out of yourself and let those feelings go. Now, move to a position of detached observer where you can see both yourself and the person you are having the problem with. Observe what's going on with those people over there. What is that other you doing? What's the other person doing? Now, take what you've learned and step back into your own shoes and look at that person you are having the problem with in new ways with new choices. And notice how many ideas and insights come to you shortly. What you've been learning will help you start to look at life with more optimism, seeing opportunities to succeed and achieve.
Positivity. Positive software for your mind. attracting wealth, the secrets of the millionaire's mind.
When I refer to wealth, I mean much more than just money. I've met, and indeed I know, some of the richest people in the world, but some of them have very little of what I'd call real wealth. Some of them are workaholics with little quality time or friends, just looking for the next million. Of course, wealth is partly about having money, but real wealth is good health. Without your health, what use is money? Real wealth to me is having good friends who you can share intimate and pleasurable experiences with, laugh with, who stimulate and fascinate you. Real wealth is feeling happy most of the time. Real wealth is a sense of knowing you're contributing something to the world, that your life is worthwhile. After all, you are unique. Nobody can do things exactly the way you do them. Everyone has special skills they bring to the world, and the fulfillment of that is a wealthy feeling. First of all, I'd like to start by dispelling some myths about money, by perhaps challenging some of your views about money, because before you can truly become richer in the physical world, you're going to have to become richer in yourself. Stop for a moment and ask, what would having more money give you that you don't already have? Whenever I ask this question, most people have ideas come to mind like freedom, security, or power. The good news is, these are states, and it's easy to create them. But wealth is relative. When some people become millionaires, 100 million then seems like a lot, and 1 million doesn't. People who think like this can never have enough money. In a sense, they always feel poor inside. The Indian guru Swami Muktananda, upon arriving in America, stood at the airport and said, "They live in paradise, yet they'll never know it." For the next few minutes, I'm going to talk specifically about money, and firstly, why some people are good at creating money and others are not. Many researchers have found the distinction is predominantly in the way that we think. I don't mean intelligence, but thought patterns. Some people have what I call a poverty consciousness. Deep down at an unconscious level, they just don't believe they're worthy of wealth. Or they fill their heads with thoughts about why they're poor, or why life isn't fair, why others have so much more than them. If you've got thought patterns like that, we're going to change them, because this part of the positivity system will help you reprogram yourself so you automatically begin to think more like a millionaire. As the author James Allen says in his book, As Man Thinketh, a particular train of thought persisted in, be it good or bad, cannot fail to produce its results in the character and circumstances. A man cannot directly choose his circumstances, but he can choose his thoughts, and so, indirectly, yet surely, shape his circumstances. Research has shown that a massive proportion of those who suddenly get enormous sums of money, for example from lotteries or inheritance, are great at losing it all very quickly. 80% are actually worse off financially just 2 years later. That's because inside they still feel poor, and the mind has to prove itself right. It can't deviate from its self-image. So if deep down you think of yourself as poor, or if you constantly fear poverty, that's usually what you'll get. In the words of Jim Rohn, if someone hands you $1 million, best you become a millionaire or you won't get to keep the money. You need to have the self-image of someone who deserves great wealth. What we're going to do next will help you develop and install in your mind a prosperity consciousness, which is much more than attracting money. It's a change in your self-image to one of greater harmony, so you begin to notice the abundance that surrounds you, taking so much more pleasure in everything. If someone has money problems, that's usually only a symptom, but not the root cause of the problem. There's something in them that needs to change. This isn't just another get-rich-quick scheme. The positivity system helps you change your fundamental attitudes towards wealth. As the saying goes, give a man a fish, he eats for a day. Teach a man to fish, and he eats for life. So what is money? The earliest system of trade was bartering. Eventually, coins were used to represent the value of things. They were the first IOUs. Then came paper money. A dollar bill is an IOU from the government. They used to print only as many dollar bills as they had gold reserves to support in the bank. However, in the 1940s, the governments of the world decided to abandon the gold standard system. Since then, they've been printing money like it was going out of fashion. So now there's only a fraction of gold in reserve compared to the amount of paper money in circulation. Even paper money is being replaced by plastic credit cards and numbers in computers. So money is essentially a symbol. Quite simply, money is a form of confidence. Say, for example, you and I are sitting here and we have $1 bill between us, and we pass it back and forth. If we do it really quickly, in a week we could spend $1 million. Money is the oil in the machine of the economy of a nation. It allows the flow of goods and services. Another way of looking at money is as packaged experience. Your efforts and work is translated into money, then it's translated back into a vacation or an automobile or whatever. However, some people view money as a commodity, wishing to acquire money for money's sake. These people often fear not having enough money, so they hoard as much as they can. This slows down the economy of a country, just as it's harder for an engine to work without enough oil. Also, these days, there are plenty of people who use money to project power, success, and happiness. However, money itself is not a source of happiness. Happiness is a neurochemical event. It's a state that you generate within you. History's littered with people who found that money alone wasn't enough. Elvis Presley, Howard Hughes, Marilyn Monroe, Christine Onassis, and the Gettys are all prime examples. The musician Ry Cooder said, "All the money in the world is spent on feeling good." But you already know that good feelings are just states of mind and body. So part of the equation of becoming wealthier is simply to cut out the middleman and just have the good feelings that the money would have given you. Some people say, well, I can't feel self-respect or achievement until I have a certain amount of money in the bank. Of course, it's great to have targets and goals, but why don't you make one of them feeling good now? Let's talk about negative thoughts about money. Most people have been programmed with some negative financial limitations. They've been taught things like the Bible says money is the root of all evil. What the Bible actually says is the love of money is the root of all evil. That is the acquiring of money for its own sake. Or they've been told that there's only a finite amount of wealth and that the more you have, the less there is for others. Again, this is more garbage. It's actually common in our culture to hear terms such as filthy rich or fat cat, which are indicative of an unconscious mistrust of money. Our unconscious beliefs about money affect how much we're able to create. If, say, you believe money is bad in some way, you'll unconsciously sabotage your attempts to create more money in your life. For example, some artists believe that they cannot have commercial success because that compromises their artistic integrity. Other people believe that you can't be a good person unless you're always helping others, even if it's to your own detriment. But as Abraham Lincoln said, you can't help the poor by being one of them. Some people stay poor because it's safe, it's what they know, but it's not what they're truly capable of. Quite simply, the outside world is a manifestation of our inner world. As you use the positivity system, you're going to let go of any old limited ideas you've had about money and program your mind to become more prosperous. Limited ideas about money are historically derived. During the Middle Ages, the feudal system gave wealth to a privileged few, whilst the masses were tricked into believing that poverty was their salvation. This hierarchical system of power assumes that there's only a finite amount of wealth to go round, implying a scarcity of wealth. That is like some of the corporations of today, where power is top-heavy and everyone competes for their position. In some cases, poverty was glamorized, and for many years, it was actually considered a Christian virtue. Some people who grew up in the last century during the Depression, or experienced rationing of food and essentials during the Second World War, have unconscious beliefs that there just won't be enough to go round, and many of them have inadvertently passed them on to their children. One of the extremely negative attitudes about money is holding resentment towards someone else's wealth. That comes from a place of very low self-esteem, and it keeps those people stuck. It's better to wish the best for others. When it comes to money, nearly all the self-help and metaphysical books refer to something called the law of attraction. The law of attraction is a useful metaphor for synchronicity, which can be described as the appearance of meaningful coincidences or incidences of chance. For example, have you ever thought about someone, the phone rings, and it's them? Now, is that telepathy, some kind of magnetic attraction, or just coincidence? Have you ever thought about, say, getting a particular car? Then suddenly you see that type of car everywhere. Maybe you're just noticing how many of those cars were there already. Wouldn't it be good to attune your mind to notice how many opportunities there are to become wealthier? Some people believe the mind is like a magnet, that what we hold uppermost in our attention, we attract to us. In other words, we always get more of what we focus on. In music, there's something called the principle of sympathetic resonance. If you have two pianos in the same room and you hit a C note on one piano, you'll find that the C string on the other piano will start vibrating in resonance at the same rate. In the same way, you're always attracting people and circumstances that resonate with your predominant thoughts. Whether you choose to believe in the law of attraction or not, it's interesting to note that many highly successful people do. Those who focus on the positive in life and attract it to them are called lucky. I personally believe we create our own luck. That is what's meant when it says in the Bible, "A man is what he thinks about all day long." Your thoughts are an energy that are powerful and creative. I've found that most wealthy and successful people tend to employ the same simple habits and beliefs about prosperity. However, the same rule of habits and beliefs applies to poverty as well. I believe that many people help to keep themselves poor through the beliefs and habits they have towards money. They use the evidence that their lack of money has made them poor, whereas sometimes their poor behaviors in relation to money is what keeps them from experiencing abundance. They've affirmed over and over again, often unconsciously, that they're poor, so it's become a self-fulfilling prophecy, a poverty consciousness. What the positivity system does is helps you to change that. I'd like to share with you some techniques that I've used myself that have helped me dramatically increase my personal wealth. I've taught them to others, they've also increased their wealth, and now I'd like to share them with you. One of the first things that made a major difference for me was consciously deciding to do things differently. Years ago, I definitely had a poverty consciousness, worrying constantly about being poor or how not to be poor. So guess what? My attention was, yes, on poverty. For example, when a bill would come through the mail, I'd open it, I'd worry about how I was going to pay it, I'd feel poor inside. Obviously, it's important to be financially organized and consider how best to pay bills. However, I was also affirming to my unconscious mind a poverty belief. If you're going to be wealthy, it's just as important to prepare for wealth by feeling rich inside. So what I started to do when I opened a bill was vividly imagine I had thousands in the bank. You can imagine how good that feels. I was sending a new message to my unconscious. Some people try saying affirmations like, "I am truly wealthy." But if deep down you don't believe that, it's next to useless. You have to create a feeling of wealth by vividly imagining yourself as wealthy over and over again. Next, I needed to change my self-image around money. I had a scruffy little checkbook, one that reflected my scruffy little finances at the time. So I changed banks and got a clean new one to help me start to feel different. The mind is sensitive, so it's important to signal to yourself that positive changes are happening. Then the real fun began. I needed to get a strong sense of what greater wealth would be like. So I got an old bank statement, cut it up, removing the bits that said overdrawn, and began to rearrange the figures and glued it back together, showing that I had thousands in credit. As soon as I'd finished, I burst out laughing. Actually holding it in my hands, it began to feel more real. Within a few months, the imaginary amount had become a reality. Having that tangible piece of paper, the bank statement, had really helped. So I went about making a scrapbook, collecting pictures of things I wanted, places I wanted to visit, people I wanted to meet. Remember, the mind needs a sensory-rich experience of what you want it to make real for you. It's important to have big dreams so you can grow into them. For example, a few years ago, I went into a Mercedes showroom, sat in a car to get comfortable, smelled the leather, went for a test drive, imagined vividly it was my own, took away a brochure and added it to my scrapbook. Imagined driving it every day. Pretty soon, I started to see Mercedes everywhere. My mind was now focused on getting me one. And chance favors the prepared mind. So it wasn't long before a bargain came along, and I bought my first Mercedes. As George Bernard Shaw said, "Some men see things and ask why. I dream things that never were and ask, why not?" A friend of mine got really into this type of creative visualization. He'd been practicing on visualizing parking spaces. Amazingly, it seemed to work. So he decided to go for bigger things. He'd never traveled abroad, and he really wanted to, but he didn't have the finances. So he collected together a bunch of travel brochures, cut out the pictures of all the places he wanted to go, and stuck them in his scrapbook. This is the funny part. He packed his suitcase every Sunday for a month and went to the airport. He even stood in line. He'd then come home and watch a video of a program about travelling on Concorde and look through his scrapbook at all the places he wanted to go. He really gave himself, his unconscious mind, that experience of travelling to and enjoying exotic locations. He focused on it for a month non-stop because he believed you always get more of what you focus on. Suddenly, he was called into his boss's office and asked if he would become their international correspondent. His boss explained it would mean travelling all over the world. He could hardly believe it. Most amazingly of all, when he arrived in a small village in Switzerland, he began to get a feeling of déjà vu. It was only when he got back to England and checked in his scrapbook that he found it was the exact same village that he'd been visualizing. Extraordinary as it may seem, I've witnessed many such occurrences similar to this since. I personally have become more skeptical about coincidences and am willing to consider that in some cases it's as though the mind may actually have the ability to attract events, things, or people to us. When I made a TV series about paranormal phenomena, we featured one experiment conducted by a French scientist. He created a robot that moved in a random pattern around the room. Then, he hatched a group of chicks. When a chick's born, the first thing it sees it believes to be its mother. This process is called imprinting. The chicks imprinted on the robot as their mother. Then, he put the chicks in a cage in one corner of the room and switched the robot on. Amazingly, it stopped moving randomly around the room and moved over to the area where the chicks were. There it stayed, moving back and forth. Strong evidence for the existence of what's known as psychokinesis, or in other words, mind over matter. It appeared that the chicks were somehow willing the robot that they believed to be their mother to stay with them. At Princeton University, hundreds of thousands of experiments have been conducted testing human ability to influence machines and physical matter. When I made my TV program about paranormal phenomena, I interviewed Dr. Michael Ibbison from Princeton University, who'd been conducting a number of experiments which strongly point to the existence of psychokinesis. Some people are better at it than others, but it's like anything. The more you practice it, the better at it you get. I began to wonder, could it really be possible to literally attract money? What is interesting is that many rich people believe that's how they do it. But how do you do it? It's very simple, but it does take regular practice. You're going to need to rehearse being wealthy, like a method actor would play a part, and do it over and over again. Totally get into that part. Okay, the first thing you need to do is get a scrapbook and start collecting pictures of things that you want, people you'd like to meet, places you'd like to go, things that you really want, anything that you want to bring into your life. Incidentally, it can just be a symbol you desire. Then, go about creating sensory-rich experiences of your goals. If it's a particular car, go about getting a test ride. Then it'll be easier to vividly imagine driving one over and over again. If it's a beautiful house, imagine walking around it until you know every inch of it. The feeling of the carpet, the smell, the texture of the furniture, and so on. Also, be open to feedback from your unconscious mind. When I first imagined owning a Bentley, I was visualizing driving it down the road. But other cars kept bashing into me. No matter how hard I kept trying to get out of the way. I took this to be a warning that, although I could get a Bentley, the cost at the time might be some jealousy. In other words, there was a cost greater than money than I'd foreseen. The next step is, every day, look at your scrapbook. Imagine what it would be like living your desire. See what you'll see, hear what you'll hear, and feel how good it'll feel. Do it as often as you can every day. You may not get instant results. You can imagine how chaotic the world would be if every whim or fancy we ever had suddenly materialized, but you will begin to set the process in action. Okay, I'd like you to stop for a moment and imagine how your life would be different if you are much wealthier. How will you walk? How will you talk? How will you feel? How will others treat you? How will you feel about paying bills? What kind of luxuries will you have? What will you buy? How will it feel better to be earning more money? Think about this every day until you become very comfortable and used to it. Right, next, here are the 20 best ideas that I can give you on how to start increasing your wealth today. Any one of these will make a difference. As you start using more and more of them, you'll move even faster towards a wealthier life, towards the millionaire's mind. Number 1, save first, then spend what you can truly afford. Now, I know this sounds obvious, but poor people do the opposite. They spend what they earn. Often, they spend more than that and wind up affirming their poverty. You have to have a plan and stick to it. Come up with a plan to clear any outstanding debts and take steps towards reducing your debt month by month. As soon as possible, stop keeping your head above water and start laying the foundations of wealth. Some people find it helpful to write down everything they spend money on. Somehow, having it right there in front of them makes it much clearer. 2, study wealthy people. Find out what it is that they're doing and you aren't. Understand how they think and behave towards money and wealth. Do the technique we did where you choose a role model. Ask yourself, what did they do that I don't do yet? Read books and listen to audio programs on wealth. There's plenty of superb sources of wisdom on the bookshelves. 3, ask for help. I find that as long as you're polite and respectful, most people are willing to help. There are other reasons why asking is a good practice. It makes other people aware of who you are and lets them know you take yourself seriously. It's a sign of self-worth. It also gives others the pleasure of helping you. Not everyone will offer to help because they don't want to impose. So ask and give them the opportunity and the pleasure of helping. It's good for their self-worth as well. As Charles Givens, the author of Wealth Without Risk, says, if you want to learn about money, learn from somebody who has a lot of it. Many of the most successful people I know have said that they wish more people would have the courage to ask them for advice. 4, do regular visualizations. Create a sensory-rich experience of what it is that you want so your unconscious mind can get a clear idea. Also, walk around for an hour each day, imagining you have everything you want. Walk into a restaurant as though you are a multimillionaire or a famous rock star or whatever it is that turns you on. Do it like a method actor would, totally get into the part, because it conditions your mind to get used to success, and it's a lot of fun. 5, make a joy list. Think of everything you love doing. Then, regularly treat yourself. Let yourself know that you really care about yourself. How do you expect other people to treat you if you don't occasionally treat yourself? 6, continually stretch yourself. Dare to dream and think big. Push the limits. I don't mean take unnecessary risks, but most achievement involves some leaps of faith. You can either choose a life of getting by and surviving, or you can push the boundaries. That's how human beings grow, by stretching. As the saying goes, if you keep doing what you've always done, you'll just get more of what you've already got. Highly successful people are continually stretching themselves. Stretching means moving out of the comfort zone. It's easy to become complacent and get stuck. However, if you continually look for bigger challenges, then you continually grow. It's important to have big dreams so you can grow into them. As Donald Trump says, you have thousands of thoughts every day. You might as well make them big ones. 7, get comfortable with money. Carry an appropriate amount of money. Get used to having it on you. Get comfortable with it. This sends an important message to yourself. One technique I used was to practice writing out checks and paying in slips for millions of dollars until I felt comfortable doing it. Obviously, don't leave them lying around. Doing that process meant that I was able to feel comfortable paying out large sums of money and to paying in large sums of money. So I conditioned myself to become a wealthier person. Far too many people are scared by large sums of money. When you get more money, your financial pressures don't get smaller. They get bigger. But that's the fun of it, because you become a more capable person. You have to be prepared to accept the responsibility. Be ready to play the bigger game. The bigger the challenges, the bigger the rewards. Like mastering any new skill, you do it one step at a time. Rehearse success over and over again, and then have it happen in the real world. Imagine what it's going to be like to be wealthier, so when it happens, it's not overwhelming. It's a pleasure. Number 8, Always give more than you're paid for. That way, other people will have a feeling of value towards you. It was only as long ago as the 60s that Japanese products were generally considered cheap and tacky. The legendary corporate consultant Edwards Deming largely helped in changing that. He developed a strategy that was adopted by the Japanese that focused upon two simple but important ideas: quality control and constant improvement. Nowadays, Japan is a nation of industrial might. By changing their beliefs about what was important, they became wealthy and powerful. It's easy. Just ask yourself, how can I do it better next time? Constantly look for ways to improve. Number 9, an attitude of gratitude. Now, I know it sounds like a cliche, but it really works. An attitude of gratitude is the exact opposite of a poverty consciousness. When you start to regularly think of all the good things you have, of how fortunate you are, that sends a strong message of abundance to your unconscious mind and creates a flow of prosperity. One of the single most important things you can do is make a practice every night before you go to sleep of thinking through all the good things in your life, your health, your friends, your opportunities, where you live in the world, and so on, and say thank you to God, to life, the universe, whatever it is that you feel most comfortable doing. A friend of mine has a great saying along these lines: today's gratitude buys you tomorrow's happiness. Of course, this also applies to people. Others love genuine gratitude, and it encourages them to help you again and again in the future. Number 10, stop seeing poverty as a problem and treat it as a challenge. Most wealthy people have to overcome it at some time in their lives. You don't have to make millions overnight. Just start making a bit more and more each day. Number 11, watch out for those old patterns of affirming poverty. For example, don't steal paper clips from the office. Anyone who's truly wealthy wouldn't need to. Feel good about paying bills. They're from people who believe that you can pay. They're more symbols or affirmations of wealth. Number 12, stop wasting time on unimportant things. Figure out what's most important to you and prioritize your life accordingly. I used to get caught with this one. Let's say your time's worth $100 an hour. Spending 2 hours calling round trying to get a lower price on something of $50 is bad money and time management. Number 13, write down good ideas as soon as they come to you. Very few people actually bother to do this. Keep a pen and paper handy or a pocket tape recorder. That way you won't be discarding your genius. Sometimes one idea could make you $1 million. For example, if you ever had an idea for a product or service, a few months later, you see it being marketed by someone else. What's the difference between you and them? They took action. They made a note of their idea and then they went out and did something about it. 14. Regularly practice the positivity techniques. For most people, opportunities to become wealthier present themselves every day without being leapt upon or even noticed. By practicing the techniques again and again, you're conditioning yourself to focus on wealth. Financial success is simply a matter of holding certain beliefs and religiously practicing certain actions consistently. Very few multimillionaires get to be rich by accident. They do it by certain ways of thinking and behaving in the world. Now it's your turn. 15. Make sure you pay yourself. Now, this may sound obvious, but you'd be surprised how many people pay everyone else and don't get around to paying themselves. They fear there won't be enough to go round, and by leaving themselves to last, there isn't. In fact, you could even go one step further and pay yourself first. Every month, write yourself a check. That way you'll unconsciously adjust your spending and make different choices so that there's some money left for you. 16. Know your weaknesses. Everybody knows what they're good at, but not everyone's good at admitting their limitations. A friend of mine's father suffered from this. He was a highly creative man, but not a skilled businessman. He made a lot of money from his creative work and lost nearly all of it through bad business deals. He loved the business he was in, but overstretched himself, thinking he could do everything. As my friend said on the matter a few years later, just because you like food doesn't mean you should be running a restaurant. There's some things I'm not good at, so I can either spend time and effort mastering them or hire someone else to do them. Number 17, get in touch with your passion every day. I remember years ago when I first got interested in hypnosis, one of the old stage performers I was learning from was a salesman. He couldn't go for long without selling something to someone. We'd be out and he'd strike up a conversation with a person on another table. He'd find out their needs and offer to sell them what it was that they wanted. Often he didn't even have it. He'd then have to go and acquire it himself. He loved the thrill of persuading someone else. One day he knocked on my door and asked me to drive him home. I inquired where his Rolls-Royce was. He explained that earlier he'd been in the bank, he got carried away and sold it to someone. When I asked him what he thought his secret was, he said, excitement and passion are contagious. When you get truly passionate about what you want to do, others will find themselves drawn to you. If you want to know more about this kind of thinking, I recommend you read Do What You Love, The Money Will Follow by Marsha Sunita. 18. Take the fear out of making money. This is a concept running throughout Dr. Richard Carlson's book, Don't Worry, Make Money. He's got some very empowering ideas. For example, stock away a large pile of money, if you can, a year of living expenses. It may involve some self-discipline, but it'll give you a massive psychological safety net. He tells a story of two men who were both offered the same job with a startup computer company in the 70s. The offer was for very low pay, but with a large piece of stock. The man who was living paycheck to paycheck thought it was too risky and passed. The one who'd put away some savings took the offer, and needless to say, within a few years he'd amassed a huge fortune. The moral of the story is that in most cases, creating abundance usually involves some risk. As the saying goes, risk is the currency of the gods. Richard Carlson also uses another example of how taking the fear out of money helps when he says, be prepared to walk away from a negotiation. You can usually go back. When you're not attached to an outcome, you're more powerful. Other people unconsciously pick this up from you. He uses an example where, say you find a house you love, the asking price is $100,000. You know it's not worth any more than $90,000. If you're willing to walk away and not to worry about it, more often than not, the seller will come back to you, because most other people are worriers. He won't want to turn down a certain thing, your offer, for an uncertain thing. He'll probably make you a counter-offer, but when he senses you're not a worrier and happy to walk away, it'll be far lower than if he sensed you had fear. Number 19. Charge what you're truly worth. There's an old story about the king's steamship. When it broke down, every engineer in the land was summoned to try and fix it, but all of them failed. Then, one little old man said that he could do it, but he wanted $300. The king agreed, and the little man took out a tiny screwdriver, turned one screw, and the steam engine began working perfectly. $300, please, said the little old man. The king, looking rather dismayed, exclaimed, $300 for turning one screw? No, replied the little man. $1 for turning the screw, $299 for knowing which screw to turn. Some people are frightened to charge what they're really worth because they fear they won't be in demand. But this strategy can keep you falsely overworked rather than giving you more money for doing less and having more time to concentrate on other ways to create abundance. Remember to reevaluate from time to time your real worth. And finally, number 20, keep going. Every successful person at some stage has to go through the frustration barrier. Colonel Sanders, who started Kentucky Fried Chicken, is a famous example. When he reached retirement age, he looked at his Social Security check and thought, I need to make some more money. So he sat down and thought through what his resources were, and he remembered that everyone loved his chicken recipe. So he went to a local restaurant and explained that he had a great recipe. He didn't want to sell it to them. All he wanted was a royalty each time they used it. Of course, they weren't interested. So he went to another one, and another one, and another one, and another one. 1,009 rejections later, he got his first acceptance. I've seen far too many people fail just because they didn't hang in there. Very few people get successful without effort and persistence. Finally, I want you to remember that true wealth is not measured by money alone. Start today. Take stock of your true wealth. Create a plan and start moving towards it. Make the changes that you need to make. After you've begun to enjoy more of the success that you desire, you'll look back and be thankful that you did.
Positivity. Positive software for your mind. radiant health, your keys to well-being and vitality.
Most doctors now agree that the mind has a profound effect upon a person's well-being. Research has shown that as an optimist, you have a powerful positive effect upon your health. Everyone knows you can think yourself into being ill. Children are great at it if they have an exam the next day at school. For some children, it's an effective way of getting attention. Unfortunately, these dysfunctional patterns sometimes continue into adulthood. Others get affected by what I call cultural hypnosis. They only have to hear a few people saying, "There's a cold going around," and they get one. Even though we've managed to eliminate many diseases, there are more sick people than at any other time in history. Research shows that the single biggest cause of ill health is stress. Stress is the effect upon the mind and body of continual, inappropriate arousal. Although stress can be considered something that only affected people in highly pressured jobs, the truth is that to some degree it affects nearly all of us. We all need a certain amount of stress, as it actually motivates us to do things like get out of the way of an oncoming car or give a presentation with energy. This could be called positive stress. However, it's the continual inappropriate arousal of our mind and body that can lead to illness. This is a negative form of stress and is what I'm going to talk about next. The stress response is historic. Our ancestors needed extreme physical reactions and a burst of energy to enable them to fight a wild animal or run away. For example, when the mind perceives a threat, the heartbeat quickens, automatically the pupils dilate, muscles tighten, adrenaline's released into the bloodstream, the digestive process halts, blood pressure rises, and the immune system is suppressed. This is known as the fight or flight response. If you're about to be attacked, you need energy and adrenaline to respond to the situation. The problem, however, is that we are continually preparing for emergencies that never happen. This puts an unnecessary strain, as every stressful thought that we have affects our body chemistry. Scientific experiments have demonstrated this. When humans are upset, they create nasty toxins in their body. In one experiment, blood samples were taken from people in extreme states of anger and fear and then injected into guinea pigs. Within only a few minutes, the guinea pigs were dead. Human beings are a lot more resilient, but it's still important that we learn to control our stress. These days, we don't have to be constantly on the lookout for wild animals, but the 20th century is full of threats from all kinds of different sources. Many people operate out of what I call the power of negative thinking. They wake up in the morning and think to themselves, "I must get up or I'll be in trouble." Of course, they don't want to be in trouble because they might get fired, then they won't be able to pay their bills and end up on the streets, etc., etc. Even though they may not consciously have this exact chain of thoughts, there's a subtle backdrop of fear. This is effectively an attempt to avoid pain rather than go towards pleasure. A positive approach is to wake up and think of all the good things that you're looking forward to doing that day. As you use the positivity system, you'll recondition yourself to be able to start each day with optimism and enthusiasm, to be more positive, which will in turn have an effect upon your general health and well-being.
Research has shown that most worries are either about things that never happened or about things from the past that can't be changed. An average day in the life has its demands and stresses. Driving to work, there's a traffic jam, or you get into an argument, you receive an unexpected bill, the kids have made a mess, you're criticized. These things may not seem like threats to you, but your nervous system doesn't tell the difference between a physical threat to yourself and a threat to your ego. So if someone criticizes you, your mind responds to the situation with a stress response that produces toxic chemicals in your bloodstream. Obviously, it's important to have an emotional dynamic range. If someone's attacking you, then you need to get angry to defend yourself. But what I'm saying is, the stress response was being unnecessarily aroused all day long, and that builds up over time, causing problems, because your health is reflected by your thoughts. There's an old Indian saying, if you want to know what your thoughts were like yesterday, then check how your body feels today. Obviously, I'm not saying that all ill health is a state of mind. Of course there are other factors, diet, genetic dispositions, but the mind plays an important part, and stress is mostly learned. so it can be relearned in a way that doesn't take an unnecessary toll on your health. Background stress may sometimes go unnoticed, but surface in the form of bad moods, depression, mistakes, even physical problems. It's often only when relaxing that we notice the tension that was there all the time. Whenever you felt bad, it's been a product of your own body's stress response. That's why in our culture some people turn to alcohol, cigarettes, or drugs to change the way they feel, to cope with stress. And as continual negative stress can lead to disease, it's a problem that needs to be dealt with. However, the good news is recent research has shown that the mind and body have their own pattern of rest and alertness with one predominant cycle that occurs approximately every 90 minutes. This is when the body stops externally oriented behavior and takes about 15 minutes to relax and replenish its energies. This has become known as the ultradian rhythm. It's those moments when you find yourself daydreaming and a gentle, sweet, soft feeling is present in your body. It's quite simply the body's own natural stress control mechanism. Unfortunately, many people override this message from their body that it's time to relax a little, and instead they have another cup of coffee or they try even harder to concentrate. After a while, they establish a pattern of overriding the ultradian rhythm. I believe that the major threat in modern life is being killed by our own defense system being triggered too often. So stress control is one of the things that I'm often employed to deal with in the corporate world. A simple and highly effective way to begin handling stress is to use the natural system we all possess in the ultradian rhythm. In future, whenever you find yourself daydreaming and a feeling of comfort starting in your body, if it's appropriate, allow yourself to really relax for 10 to 15 minutes. Go with it, because you'll rouse up feeling refreshed with better concentration afterwards. The first researcher of the physiological consequences of stress, Hans Selye, remarked that the most important stresses for man are emotional. He went on to say that it's not the event, but rather our interpretation of it that causes our emotional reaction. By interpreting our experiences differently, we can begin to respond more to the events in our life rather than react to them. I often relax into trance and imagine myself sunbathing on an exotic beach. Given that the nervous system doesn't differentiate between a real and a vividly imagined event, when I awaken from trance, I feel as though I've just been on holiday. Or as far as my nervous system is concerned, I have. Here's a simple exercise called a power nap that you can do once a day to recharge your batteries and improve your well-being. Do not do this exercise whilst driving or operating machinery. Only do it when you can safely relax completely. Begin by moving your attention down to your feet. Notice the feelings of your feet, their relative warmth or coolness, and their weight. Take a deep breath in and let it out. And as you do that, imagine a pleasant, warm, and relaxing feeling developing in your feet. Now, take another deep, gentle breath in and imagine that warm and relaxing feeling traveling up your legs to your knees. And say the number 1 in your mind. Allow that warm, relaxing feeling to penetrate your muscles and bones, gently spreading and soothing as it moves. When you're ready, take another gentle, deep breath in and imagine that warm feeling rising up to your waist. And as it does, say 2 inside your mind. Next, breathing in again. Pull that feeling up to your shoulders and say the number 3 in your mind. Let the relaxation flow up your body and along your arms to your hands. Next, breathing in, let the feeling go right to the top of your head as you say the number 4. Spread those good feelings all around your body. Say in your mind the number 5 and imagine that feeling doubling as if a new, fresh flow of relaxation was descending from above your head and joining the warm feelings already going on within you. And as you imagine this flow of relaxation spreading back down your body, imagine any and all tension draining down your body and out through the bottoms of your feet, while you're being refilled with relaxing, refreshing energy. Make sure you take a few moments to really enjoy those feelings of relaxation. Pause for a little while to notice the feeling, and then, if you wish, you can repeat it. The more you practice that technique, the more effective it becomes. You should do this twice a day. You can do it in many places. You don't have to make an announcement before you start. If you do it on the bus or the train, people will think you're just dozing. Even if you work in an open-plan office or a factory, you can always find an excuse to get out for 5 minutes. Make a point of doing this every day. It doesn't take long, and it's a good habit to establish, which will reinforce all your other stress-reducing techniques. Remember, repetition is the agent of success. It's also worth mentioning aerobic exercise is important in controlling stress. Swimming, running, or any exercise that oxygenates the blood makes controlling stress easier. It's often a good idea to consult your doctor about exercise. When you start, you might find it better to exercise in the morning. If you exercise before you go off to the office, there's more chance that you'll do it. Be consistent. Start to do a little bit every day. You might not get immediate results. Begin exercising gradually though, maybe walking briskly for about half a mile every day to begin with. You should aim to take 3 20-minute aerobic workouts each week. Get a plan, or even better, get a personal trainer or training partner. With someone else, it can be more fun. Set targets, or even make a bet with someone about reaching your target. One study shows that if you make a bet with friends, you're more likely to stay motivated. Of course, there's all the usual things that you probably know. Stop smoking. If you drink alcohol, use it responsibly. Always eat well-balanced meals. Good food is fresh food. Plenty of fruits, vegetables, and grains. Drink plenty of mineral or filtered water. Research has shown that healthy people are usually happy people. That's why a good sense of humor is so important. If you ask most people if they tell jokes well, they'll probably say no. But if you ask them if they have a sense of humor, they'll almost always say yes. Having a sense of humor is vital, not just to amuse yourself, but as an essential psychological resource. When you're light-hearted, your body manufactures different chemicals inside you from when you're unhappy. The writer Norman Cousins recovered from a crippling illness after he started watching endless comedy videos. He says he literally laughed himself better. As it says in the Bible, a merry heart does like a good medicine, but a brittle spirit drieth the bones. Laughter eases pain. Often, when I'm in a difficult situation, I make a joke out of it to relieve the tension. Then I set about solving it. One of my favorite self-improvement programs is C.W. Metcalf's Humor, Risk and Change. He talks about how we're conditioned into terminal seriousness as we enter adulthood. To illustrate this, he tells a story about a young girl who was laughing one day with her sister. Her father came into the room, slapped them both on the face and said, "If you're always laughing, people won't think you're very intelligent." You can imagine what kind of effect this had on her growing up. But the fact is that many people get conditioned out of being spontaneously humorous. They end up believing that their serious faces show the world how intelligent they are and that they're qualified for leadership. Whenever I do a corporate training, I always ask the executives to show me their biggest smiles. Some of them look like their faces are going to crack. Occasionally, some of them won't even do it. Humor's a resource. It's helpful to elicit humor states every day at appropriate times. Remember, every time you laugh, you stimulate the release of chemicals in the brain that enhance your well-being. There are other ways to improve your health as well. These days, there are so many reports about what's bad for us. But let's not forget one very important thing. We all have our own immune system. The body and the mind working together to heal, protect, and regulate the fantastic vessel that we essentially are. We live in an age when incredible medical advancements are constantly taking place. Drugs and surgery have become commonplace. Many people expect instant cures from the doctors for their ills and hand over responsibility for their health to the medical profession, preferring a prescription to instigating a change in their lifestyle or diet.
The cultural acceleration of prescription drugs has led to other problems. Dr. E.W. Martin, MD, believes that more people are killed each year by prescribed drugs in the USA and Britain than are killed in road accidents. Perhaps this is one reason why so many people are now looking for alternative ways to improve their health. A few years ago, some interesting research was conducted in the United States to try and discover why some people survive cancer. The people interviewed had all been diagnosed as terminally ill. However, 12 years later, they were still alive. The intention of the study was to discover what they'd done that was similar. They'd all used different treatments, some conventional like surgery or chemotherapy, and others alternative like acupuncture and nutritional diets. Some had used psychological techniques or religious practices. However, all 100 people in the study believed that what they were doing would work for them. In medical history, there's an interesting demonstration of the power of belief called the placebo. This is a tablet with no inherent curative properties. In the United States, all new drugs have to be tested against placebos, so there's a lot of research on them. Interestingly, on average, placebos are about 30% as effective as medical drugs. However, in some specific cases, it's much higher. Against morphine, placebos are 54% effective. The colour of the tablet has also been found to be a very important factor. In pain control, a red tablet is much more effective than other colours. However, for a placebo to work, the person taking it has to believe it's going to work. Most healthcare professionals now acknowledge that a patient's attitude is a major factor in the success of their recovery. The techniques on this part of the positivity system will help you get your mind and body working efficiently together to make you healthier. Research has shown that many people who believe they control their immune system find that they can easily do so using guided imagery techniques. These individuals could actually increase the number of protective blood cells in their bodies, improving their resistance to illness. Some doctors have recently proven just how using the imagination can affect your health. 2 doctors at the Yokohama City University in Japan showed that 84% of subjects could eliminate the standard histamine response to poison ivy. The itching, swelling, and blistering disappeared when the subjects simply imagined the poison ivy to be a harmless plant. Even more interesting, a large number of subjects broke out in blisters when they reversed the experiment and imagined a harmless plant to be poison ivy. Another experiment by Dr. David Spiegel at Stanford was conducted on a group of women with breast cancer. Half the group received the latest medical help. The other group received the same medical treatment and did a very simple guided imagery. They imagined themselves relaxing and floating. After a year, the second group reported much less pain and more optimism. That didn't really surprise the researchers, but what did was that 10 years later, the second group had lived an average of twice as long as the first. One of the first terminally ill people I ever worked with was a lady who had cancer. Unfortunately, each time she had chemotherapy, her immune system became depleted, so I taught her a simple visualization technique which dramatically boosted her immune system. Her doctor explained to her that it would usually take between 10 and 14 days for her immune system to return to normal after the type of chemotherapy she was having. However, hers was completely rejuvenated after just 5. He could hardly believe it, especially when she told him that all she'd done was a simple visualization technique. My inspiration for this exercise came from an experiment carried out by Professor Karen Olness at the Rainbow Babies and Children's Hospital of University Hospitals of Cleveland. The experiment involved a group of children who were shown a video featuring puppets. Each puppet represented something different. One puppet was a virus, another one that looked like a policeman represented the immune system. The video was a simplified illustration of the internal workings of the body that the children could easily understand. When the video finished, the children were told to close their eyes and simply imagine more policeman puppets, and then more and more policeman puppets. Saliva samples were then taken from each child, and the results showed that their immune systems had begun working as though they were fighting off real infections. So I began wading through the clinical research and found that similar experiments also confirmed that it's possible to boost your immune system just by thinking about it. At the time, I used to get a cold about every 2 months. So I immediately set about building an immune system booster in my mind, and the result was that I experienced far fewer, instead of 2 a month, 2 a year. So how's it done? Well, it's very easy. There are infinite ways. For example, the lady who had cancer imagines a blue light starting to glow around her left arm, then spreading out and around her entire body, signaling to her unconscious to boost the immune system. Being a fan of Star Trek, I imagine a control desk with a computer screen image of my body, like a scan. Then, I push a button marked Immune System Booster, and I hear a sound like this as the display lights up. By the way, this technique is very powerful, and it's possible to overdo it. Shortly after I started boosting my immune system, one night as I went to sleep, I pushed the button, and it didn't light up. So I asked my unconscious for a boost, and I got back a very strong no signal. Interestingly, the next day, I was talking with a scientist friend of mine. I mentioned what had happened the previous night, and he suggested it might be because overdriving the immune system can cause arthritis. My unconscious was protecting me, so I simply added a thermostat switch, and it's worked perfectly ever since. So when you create your immune system booster, we're going to add a thermostat so that you can boost it, but never more than is right for you. It's important to learn to listen to your body because pain has a purpose. For example, if you never felt any pain, you'd be able to do yourself all kinds of damage. If you put your hand on something hot, you need a pain signal to tell you to take it away. Emotional pain, as well as physical pain, is there to signal to us that a change is needed. It has a positive intent. Some people go on feeling unnecessary pain or getting unnecessarily stressed out. But you don't have to anymore. We're going to change that.
Positivity, positive software for your mind. The secrets to inner happiness and contentment.
Some people have made the mistake of thinking of happiness as something that only comes from the outside. And this is understandable. In the West, our culture emphasizes the pursuit of happiness through external means. Go-getting, working hard, making money. We're told that this will make us happy, but clearly this is only part of the story. In the East, the culture emphasizes acceptance of the conditions of existence and that happiness is found within. However, I believe it's good to have a balance. But if you really think about it, happiness is not an outcome or something you can buy from a store or earn. It's a state of mind and body. Happiness is the response that you feel to what's happening in your life. And the good news is that you can learn to experience that response much more often, as you already know how to easily create states. But before I share these secrets with you, I want you to pause and stop a moment and join me in thinking about what happiness really is for you. Think a little more deeply now. What is happiness like for you? For some, it's like warm, peaceful, glowing feelings. For others, it's a kind of delightful sense of inner satisfaction. I don't know precisely what it's like for you, but I do know that if you begin to have that feeling that you call happiness happening right now, you could identify it in an instant. Maybe you've been putting obstacles in the way of feeling happiness. Maybe you've been waiting around for things to make you happy. Stop waiting. Why not cut out the middleman and just feel good anyway? Simply remember now a time when you felt good and happy, or imagine what it would be like if you felt happy right now. See what you saw, hear what you heard, and feel how good you felt. all over again. And that starts to bring back the happy feeling. We can then amplify that feeling of happiness. Now, we'll do a great technique that only makes you feel good, but has many other benefits as well. When I read the research about how people were able to boost their immune system just by thinking about it, I wondered, what else can the mind do? How else can your mind influence your internal body chemistry? I heard about a medical doctor in New York who'd helped drug addicts to overcome their addiction by putting them into trance and getting their body to create the response to the drug so that they got high naturally from the inside. And because it was their bodies making them feel good naturally, he was able to wean them off the drugs. This works because any drug, and that includes caffeine, nicotine, or aspirin, that you've ever taken, be it licit or illicit, creates a response in your body. In other words, it's not what the drug does that makes you feel a particular way. It's what your body does in response to the drug that gives you the feeling. What particularly interested me is the idea of teaching the mind to get the body to create the chemicals inside that lead to good feelings. There's a great scientist called Professor Candace Pert who, when she was only a graduate student, discovered what are called the opiate receptors in the brain and body. For decades, researchers had been trying to find out what was it that allowed opium to have its euphoric effects. Candace Pert found these receptors not just in the brain, but in every single cell of the body. There's one special kind of chemical messenger called endorphins, or endogenous morphines. That means the body's natural euphoriant painkiller. Everyone knows what endorphins feel like. They're the body's natural opiates. Endorphins are the neural transmitters that control pain and create pleasure. You get an endorphin release when you do physical exercise, make love, laugh a lot, relax deeply. You know that happy, glowing feeling. Because endorphins are neurotransmitters, they create more bonding in the brain, so they actually make you more intelligent. And every cell in your body has receptors for endorphins. The way that your brain and body communicates with itself to let you know that it's time to feel good is cell to cell. A chemical message trips off one cell, takes on the shape of the endorphin, and sets up a vibration, and the cells next door go, ooh, something cool's going on, and they start resonating in the same way, and then cell to cell a wave spreads like a wave of pleasure. Now, when you experience a wave of pleasure, you know what that feels like. You know how it feels on a cold winter's day to slide into a warm bath, and you get that feeling of, ooh. You know what it feels like when you eat your favorite food. Because as you get those endorphins freely flowing through your body, you feel so good because every cell is sharing the state. When I heard about people stopping drug abuse and getting naturally high, I started immediately experimenting to see if I could get people to have endorphin releases. Not only was I able to instantly experience some great feelings, I was even able to get them without doing a trance. People who I tried it with suddenly found they felt fantastic. I'd simply ask a part of them that was in charge of their endorphins to give them an endorphin release. Then some people smiled with delight, whilst other people fell about laughing. Since then, I've taught thousands of people how to give themselves an instant endorphin release. Recently, a psychiatrist wrote to me and explained how he'd been using the technique with his patients who suffered from depression and how much it had helped them. So the endorphin release technique is what we're going to do next. In a moment, I'm going to ask you to answer some simple questions. You'll know the answer intuitively, as a yes or a no. Don't try to think about the answers. For example, if you ask yourself, are you a human being? Obviously, you know the answer is yes. You don't have to think about, am I a human being or not? You just know that it's a yes. So, first of all, I want to ask that part of you that creates endorphin releases, in theory, in a moment when we ask for it, would it be acceptable for you to have one? Yes or no? If it's yes, then would it be okay for it to be large enough to be noticeable? Yes or no? If it's yes, then have one now. That's right. And if it's okay, then double that good feeling and really enjoy it again now. Remember a time you had a very noticeable endorphin release. See what you saw, hear what you heard, and feel how good you felt. Make the colors richer and brighter. Make the sounds louder and crisper. And notice where that feeling starts and spreads to as you have that release of endorphins again now. Next, I'd like you to imagine that there's a button in your mind with the word endorphins written on it. Now, in the future, at any time you want or need an endorphin release, you can just imagine pressing that button, and then those feelings will come back again. When I first discovered this, I thought, fantastic! I'm going to feel great all the time! However, it's important to have an emotional dynamic range. When you're crossing the road, it's not the wisest idea to be buzzed out of your mind on endorphins. You want to have your wits about you whilst you're negotiating the traffic. Likewise, when you're in an argument, you might need to have a certain amount of adrenaline in order to defend yourself. However, since it's so easy, why not feel great most of the time using this fantastic natural technique? Next, flow. Professor Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi from the University of Chicago has spent years studying what he calls flow. There are many ways to describe flow. Perhaps the best is optimal experiences, when we feel in control of our consciousness, a sense of exhilaration or deep joy, when everything becomes effortless and we're totally absorbed in what we're doing. Athletes refer to this as being in the zone. Musicians sometimes talk about being in the groove. Zen meditators occasionally experience being at one with things. These optimal experiences are something we make happen by becoming totally involved in an activity, not because we believe it will necessarily make us look good or make us money, but for the sheer sake of doing the thing for its own sake. The great thing about flow is that everyone experiences it. Old, young, rich, poor, smart, stupid people, every person on the planet. But what's interesting is that some people experience it a lot more than others. So what is it that usually brings about the experience of flow? When your attention is really, truly invested in a worthwhile goal, something that's achievable, not too difficult, not too easy. It could be anything: playing a game of tennis that tests your ability, reading a book that gives illumination, when drawing, correctly portraying perspective, light and shade, driving on difficult terrain, coordinating iron body movements, dancing, hearing the beat and melody of a song and moving in an expressive way to it, thinking, reasoning through the strands of a problem and arranging them in consciousness, or noticing the subtle differences in tastes of different foods. Often, when people are doing something, they're not totally involved in it. They hold back or are distracted by worries or frustrations. As Mark Twain once remarked, he'd been through some really terrible things in his life, and some of them actually happened. It's really important to be in the now, because when you totally concentrate on a goal or task to the extent that you exclude everything else from your awareness, you overcome a challenge and you experience flow. That's because when you're really involved in something, you forget about yourself. The musician and the instrument, the player and the ball become one. This produces a feeling of effortlessness, freedom from worries. The process must offer immediate feedback. When the golfer hits the ball, he knows if it's a good shot or not, nearer or further from the hole. The game of golf is fulfilling if it stretches the player and helps him become a more complex and capable human being. Doing the same thing at the same level of skill becomes boring, though often that pushes us to look for bigger challenges. Flow is so rewarding that some people will expend a great deal of energy to experience it. Not all challenges are pleasant, but research has shown that it's not what happens to us in life, but how we choose to respond to it that's important. Some people look upon work as a kind of curse, whereas for others, it's what they live for, because by becoming involved in their work, they create flow. We experience pleasure when our biological or psychological needs are met. Eating when we're hungry fulfills a biological need. Interacting with other people fulfills a psychological need. As you learn to master the flow experience, it won't matter to you if you're not rich, slim, fit, or famous. Unfulfilled needs will become unimportant. All your experiences will be more enjoyable. Many people go to great lengths to create pleasure in what they do. Some rock stars record songs and continually tour, even though they've all the money they could ever spend. They're addicted to the flow states that they get from recording and performing. It makes their life more rich and meaningful. As James M. Barrie said, the secret of being happy is not doing what one likes, but likes what one does. Rock climbing is something that's always puzzled me. Why would anyone want to do that? There doesn't appear to be any gain in it to me. Although, that's part of the appeal. Climbing for climbing's sake. Many climbers report that when they've reached the top of a rock, after the relief has subsided, there's a desire for it to go on and on. I'm sure you can think of other experiences that compare to that. In the past, many people have worked hard to create flow in their lives. However, there's an easy way to do it. Flow is a state. What's particularly great about that is that whenever you've experienced flow in the past, your unconscious mind has made a recording of the physiological and psychological aspects of that optimum experience. So what we're going to do in the trance section is get your unconscious mind to go on a search and find all the times in the past when you've experienced flow, that effortless optimal state. Then make a record of the state and begin to trigger that state more and more often for you every day. You'll be doing something and you won't know why you're so harmoniously involved in what you're doing, and it'll happen more and more each day. After a while, almost anything you do can become effortless and joyous. Some people report that even listening to the silence between sounds can be exhilarating. It's because flow is a neurophysiological state. In other words, a set of electrical impulses in your brain and chemical changes in your body. It's because flow is a neurophysiological state. In other words, it's a set of electrical impulses in your brain and chemical changes in your body. That means that your mind and body have a multisensory recording stored of exactly of how you make that state. So you can make it happen again. Now, you may be able to go straight back into that flow state easily, or it may take a little time to learn how to easily access that state fully again. One of the best ways to re-access flow is by remembering a time when you were in flow or in the zone. Because, remember, the human system cannot tell the difference between a real and a vividly imagined experience. In a moment, we're going to remember a time that you were in flow and amplify it. Then, in the trance section, we'll program your mind and body to take you into flow more and more every day so that you can live more of your life in flow, able to say the right things at the right time, easily thinking of the perfect thing to do as you glide through the day with an amazing sense of satisfaction. Okay, let's do it now. Only perform this next exercise when you can safely relax completely. Make yourself comfortable. Relax and close your eyes. Now, just remember times when you've been in states of flow, seeing what you saw, hearing what you heard, and feeling how good you felt. This starts recreating the flow state within you. Now, amplify it. Make the pictures bigger, bolder, brighter, more solid. Make the sounds louder and crisper. Make the feelings stronger, and notice where the feelings begin in your body and where they move to, and before they have time to finish. And notice where that feeling of flow begins as a feeling in your body, where it moves to and finishes. And then give it a colour and make that colour twice as bright. And before it has time to finish, start that colour again and move it with greater intensity. That's it. And now anchor this state by squeezing your thumb and finger together. That's right. And as you squeeze your thumb and finger together, go through it again. See what you saw, hear what you heard, and feel how good you felt. Make the colours rich and bright and bold, the sounds loud and crisp, and the feelings strong. And give those feelings a strong colour and move that colour with greater intensity around your body. And squeeze your thumb and finger together. That's right. And relax and open your eyes. Now, squeeze your thumb and finger together and remember that good feeling again. And practice this more and more every day so that you build up a strong trigger by squeezing your thumb and finger together for that flow state. Some psychologists believe in what they call background stress. In other words, even though someone might be doing something enjoyable, there's still some hidden worry lurking somewhere back there. But rather than background stress, I think it's a much better idea to have background happiness. We're going to have your unconscious mind trigger that flow state throughout the day, so sometimes it's more noticeable than others. As you begin to find yourself having optimum states of experience, it becomes more of a habit. The neural pathways in your brain that create flow and background happiness become stronger and stronger until you hardwire yourself to be in flow nearly all the time. In fact, whatever you're doing, whether it's pleasant or not, you'll be in flow. Every activity that you engage in is satisfying for you. And finally, as we're nearly at the end of this audio program, I'd like to talk about the future. We live in a truly exciting time in our planet's history. These days, there's more information to absorb, more to learn, and more opportunities than ever before. We live in a digital information age, and the pace of life is going to get quicker and quicker because the creative technology we now have is able to create more and different technology. You only have to look at how the exchange of information in the last 100 years has changed the world. A century ago, the telegraph made it possible to send messages over great distances. By the turn of the century, the wireless had arrived, followed by tape recording, television, and photocopying. The arrival of computers has not only made things faster, but more efficient as well. We can now communicate across the planet from mind to mind. Something happens on one side of the world and we can all watch it on our TV screens seconds later, all sharing the experience. The eyes and ears of our telecommunications networks are becoming the eyes and ears of humanity. The mind is now, more than ever, the dominant creative force on the planet. Of course, the great thing about this is we've all got one. Our thoughts are more powerful now than they've ever been. With the exponential increase in technology, we're likely to see some amazing changes. The reason that this time in our history is so exciting, though, is because generally we, unknowingly, stand on the edge of an incredible leap in human evolution. To make this leap, we need a radical shift in our values. Rather than continually looking for fulfillment in the outside world, which has made us overly competitive, selfish, and rapidly consume the Earth's resources without care for the ecological consequences, we need to begin to find more contentment within. And I believe that the kind of techniques that we've been using on this audio program are what more people will turn to in the future. Some people resist change because they fear the unknown. The American economist Paul Zane-Pilzer has some empowering concepts about wealth in the future. Traditionally, economists study the application of scarce resources. He argues that there's no scarcity because with technology, we're constantly able to do more with less. These days, a country's wealth is no longer gauged by its physical resources. If that was the case, the former Soviet Union would be the richest country in the world, with all its oil, gold, and raw minerals. Instead, these days, it's technology or ideas that create wealth. The real wealth these days is in our thoughts, with the richest ideas creating the greatest wealth. For example, take computers. They're essentially made from sand, but it's the ideas and thoughts behind them that are their genius. Just think for a moment. You possess one of the richest and most powerful pieces of equipment in the world right between your ears. Your brain. The fact that you've chosen to invest in yourself sets you apart from the masses. It's a decision that will enrich the quality of your life many times over, because life is only as amazing as the ideas that you have about it. As you use this audio program, you're putting yourself ahead of the rest, taking responsibility for programming your own mind. You've learned some powerful ways to run your own brain. The positive software that you've put into your mind will begin to manifest with the enhanced quality of results you begin to get in the world. And the future truly looks bright for you.
Positivity, positive software for your mind.